Beyond the Waves is a Hail Hail Media production. It may contain sweary words and adult situations may be discussed. If you're in the company of underage Tims, turn off the show now and listen back later. If you'd like to get in touch with the show, email us at beyondthewaves67@gmail.com. You can also reach us on Twitter at BTW Celtic Show, or check us out on Facebook and join our group at Beyond the Waves. Hail, hail, and keep the faith.
You think you're smart, but they know how to break your heart. They'll chew you up and spit you out, make you start again.
Welcome to the Beyond the Waves Celtic Football Show. My name is Graham Wilson, and thank you so much for joining us today. Great show in store. 3-3 was the result today. I don't know. I think it might have been a bit unfair. The team showed a lot of spirit to fight back from 2-0 down. In my impression, there was a lot of Tony Mowbray hanging over this game and a lot of reasons. Nothing to get overly dramatic about, but just an observation. But we will break all of that down, and we're also joined by a special guest today who we will introduce in a minute. But before we do that, joining us as always from Perth Amboy, New Jersey, it is Tits McGee. How are you, Tits?
Tits McGee is not here with the Rev standing by. What's going on?
How are you, sir?
I'm all right. How you doing?
Did you have an opportunity to watch the game this morning?
A bit.
Was it because you were watching? Were you getting high instead of watching the game? Is that?
No, not today.
No.
It was the old lady's birthday last night, so we didn't go to bed till late.
The old lady. What are you like in the Hell's Angels or something? Like what is this?
Yeah, but she's the what do they call them? Yeah, the hangers on, whatever.
Oh, yeah, very very well put. Okay, well, fantastic stuff. Thank you so much for joining us, and joining us once again, one of a great friend to the show, the Green and White writer, Mr. Paul Larkin. How are you, Paul?
Hello, Graham. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us today. 3-3 was the result. You were there at Fir Park. Tell us a bit about the atmosphere and your general thoughts on the game.
Well, it's funny you bring up the atmosphere because one of my big bugbears was the fact that, that was Motherwell's biggest game of the season. The weather's been fantastic all week in Scotland, and their support there today was just beyond pathetic.
Yeah.
I mean, they probably had maybe 1,200 fans there, which is just an embarrassment. I mean, we go around to Scotland and we get hated everywhere we go. We get treated like shit everywhere we go, and yet we actually subsidise these football clubs.
It is amazing.
Upon which none of them would even exist if it wasn't for us.
Yeah.
Because we've shown that they will all be able to survive the death of the Rangers, no problem. If we left, boom, they'd be finished. So the flip side of that, of course, was the Celtic support, which was just in there in huge numbers and in great voice and all that kind of thing. I was in the main stand, so I was able to get a kind of good look at the big stand. And the atmosphere was fantastic. It was just beautiful weather all week. I know you've been having problems with your weather, but we've actually been, a bit of a heat wave and it's a beautiful sunny day and stuff. So, and as for the game, I mean, I'm not really going to look too much into it. I thought a few of us were off the pace, kind of understandable given we not had a game for 2 weeks. Thought the first goal was poor for Ambrose, poor for Forster. Second goal was just poor defensively. But comeback was good. I'll be honest with you, Motherwell's supposed to be second or third best team in the league. I mean, we've played it in first gear all day today and should have won that game.
No question.
We've given them a 2-goal start and missed a penalty and still should have won that game.
No question.
So, it's not that. Third goal, I mean, they're just another honest mistake. I mean, the linesman gives an offside against Griffiths, which is nowhere near offside.
No,
I mean, everybody
really
could see it.
Yep.
And then, they score for the resultant free kick. To which I believe when people were texting me and stuff saying, Neil McCann's wetting himself in the studio and stuff like that, and that's par for the course.
Exactly.
Celtic, dropped points for the first time since the 60s, I think, and everybody's creaming their pants about it. Whereas reality is we're sitting 25 points clear at the top of the league, having won it ages ago. So all in all, Graham, I'm disappointed not to win the game, but certainly not going to be crying about it after.
No question. I think that, these games, as they're laid out, I mean, you're just trying to learn something, and my preference would be maybe getting some more of the younger kids on and seeing what you have with that. But we did see Baram Kyle play today. There's been some trepidation about whether or not Kyle's going to stay, whether he's going to go. I mean, a month ago, he comes out in the press and says that Scottish football isn't up to par, and he reflects back to after his first season, he was being looked at by Alex Ferguson and Dalglish, and now all of a sudden, he just can't find a place. And then this past week, he comes out and he says that he wants to stay at Celtic. I don't know whether it's lost in translation, if he's caught between two minds, if it's press manipulation, but the bottom line is we're stacked at that central midfield position, and he's going to need to step up and step up quite a bit more than he did today if he wants to actually have a future with Celtic. Your thoughts on the Baram Kyle situation, and did we pick up anything by seeing him today?
Well, I think if I was to make a guess, I would say that he wanted to leave a month ago. Then his agent tried to get him a club, and now he wants to stay. Because I don't think anybody would be interested. I mean, the wages he's on right now, $15,000 a week.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
What's the value for money is just beyond a joke with Kyle, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, he's just an absolutely terrible football player. He doesn't understand football. He has no positional sense whatsoever. The shot the day. He ran through one-on-one the goalie, was akin to Jeff Thomas at Wembley, but he somehow manages to pass it back to the goalie. He's out of position all the time.
Yeah.
We got slaughtered twice at Fir Park at the end of last season because he played in the middle of the park beside Rogic.
Exactly.
And Rogic, I wouldn't blame Rogic for it because Kyle ran about like a headless chicken all day. And it was the same again today, and it was no surprise to see him get substituted. You could just see, you could see it at Tannadice, and you could see it again. Johansson was just looking at him half the time saying, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
And so, I don't know. I mean, I'm hoping he's just in the shop window and maybe to get him a medal and all that kind of thing. But as you say, we're top heavy in that position, and I would probably put him right at the bottom of that pile, and I'd include the likes of Henderson in that.
No question about it. I mean, you bring up Johansson and looking around at him like, what are you doing? And it must be so difficult trying to play next to a player like that. I mean, we talked in the past about Scott Brown and some of his positional disciplinary issues, I guess, if you want to refer to it as that. I think to a large extent, he's really cleaned it up, and we found formations that have really allowed him that roaming role. Obviously, playing next to Victor Wanyama, you can run wherever the hell you want. He covers so much space, but nonetheless, it must be difficult in that sort of situation. And then, was it surprising to you to see Lee Griffiths being subbed on for Barham Kayal? I mean, obviously, it was proven correct in the end. Lee Griffiths comes on and scores a brilliant goal, but in that sort of situation, then you're forced to play Samaras and Stokes eventually in the midfield.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny because obviously had the boy Heron playing right back. He's clearly not a right back. I mean, we all know that.
Right.
And he done admirable, but it's positional. It's a tough position to play full back. I mean, it used to just be the guy who wasn't quite as strong. A defender would just play full back. Nowadays, you've got to have pace. You've got to get past people. You've got to get back first. You've got to get up and down the pitch all day. And he, found it tough and whatever. And they slopped Brown in there because he'd done well at tennis and that. I wasn't surprised to see Griffiths on the bench to start with, primarily because clearly the Riot Act has been read to Griffiths, rightly so in my opinion. I mean, I would, if he had any involvement, and I don't know, and I wouldn't hang him for it, but if he had any involvement in that abhorrent song, then I would have fucking made it absolutely abundantly clear to him that this is just not acceptable in any shape or form. And, so I wasn't surprised that he has to kind of fight his way back. To me, it was a good decision to play Samaras at Tannadice because Dundee United struggle between the defence and midfield. They've got Rankin in there. He's not got the pace to get into people. Motherwell pack that area all the time, primarily because they're centre-halves are Hutchison, who's not got pace, and McManus, who's just, ambling along to the end of their career kind of thing. So therefore, Samaras and Kyle got a lot of joy last 2 weeks ago at Tannadice because they got space, and then Commons could whip balls in and he could just furrow around that wee thingy, which is great for us. Today, different story, and they looked lost. They really did look lost. Samaras looked lost. Having said that, Graham, I have to take my hat off to Samaras for his goal, because if you watch it again, he actually takes McManus out the game.
He does, yeah, you're right.
And he allows that 2 second period at the ball to come to him to put it in the net, and that was good thinking. You know what I mean? That's you kind of look at that and you think, well, your strength, because McManus is a big boy and all,
Sure. It's a handful.
You should be doing that every week.
Exactly. That was exactly my thought. Like, why don't you do that? I mean, that's exactly the role that we want him to play, and he so seldom does it. And when he does it, it brings in a moment of magic. But it just seems as though it looks as if there's not the commitment there, but I don't know if he has the mentality or the anticipation to be able to pick out situations and read the game where he can inject himself like that on a consistent basis. But you're right. I mean, in that situation, he imparted himself on the game and scored a fantastic goal. Yeah, and then we get the third goal. It was a good finish by Griffiths. Needless to say, gets booked for scoring, as most Celtic players do these days. Unbelievable. And then, as I said, we lose the goal. But as I said before, that's Motherwell's biggest game of the season, right? They are in a two-horse race with Aberdeen for second place, basically, right? And that's Champions League football, you know what I mean? So they had to really go for it. And, I thought some of the players, Ambrose, maybe even Van Dijk, played with a bit of scowl on their face today, and they kind of weren't happy about certain things and whatever. But what I would say is that, there's guys like Brown and Commons who consistently play well for Celtic. And you can ask any player in Scotland, that's not an easy thing to do. No, it certainly isn't. I mean, especially given... And whereas they can, Commons misses a penalty, he doesn't go down, he's still there, he's still fighting and all that kind of thing. Good point. And yes, of course, you want to win the game, but at the end of the day, I mean, this has been, in terms of the domestic league season, a phenomenal season. Yeah. I mean, look at the points gap. Yeah. Even heard this week, I know it's a wee aside, was this Aberdeen fan phoned in a radio station and said that he was a bit disappointed that Hearts did go bust because Aberdeen would have benefited from Hearts, not in terms of not fulfilling the season and getting the points that they'd lost back. And I'm thinking, so you pull 7 points back? We're 25 points clear of you. Right. It just this kind of laughable, and I'm kind of glad that died down because we've all heard about is how great Aberdeen have done this season, and how great St Johnstone have done this season, and all this kind of thing. What about us? Yeah, you know what I mean. Yeah, exactly. We have just blown basically the whole league to shreds. Exactly. And we're playing an open, expansive game. It wasn't that great today, but we've changed the system, and with the young players we've got coming through, Johansson there, Henderson there, Beaton, Forrest. I'm really excited about this Celtic team, I must admit. I am too. Yeah, and it's a great point. Additionally, the accomplishments of the season, given the fact that we really didn't have an out-and-out striker until the end of January when Lee Griffiths came in. You talk about the fantastic goal that he scored today. I mean, that is a poacher's goal. The anticipation that he shows to be in the spot where to receive that ball and then put it away, that's something that, I sent out the tweet. I mean, Pookie he wouldn't have that in 1,000 Sundays. You either have that instinct and you have that killer sort of drive, or you don't, and that's the difference between, a supporting striker and maybe somebody that has a bit of skill, a bit of technique, and somebody that's just, goes straight for the throat and is going to score you those 20 to 30 goals in a season. That's something that, we've been lacking this season. And in spite of that, we've been able to pour on the goals. I mean, we had a stretch there in late November, early October where, we're just piling up goals. I mean, the game against Hearts, in the Cup and so on, we're finding different ways to manufacture goals and to put it in the back of the net, which I think is it's laudable.
Well, there was a discussion sort of pre-match about, you see the bench and stuff, and you talk about people like Pookie and Baldy and Borictor, and I think again Baldy showed he's a real handful when he comes on. I mean, Christ, this guy looks like he could have Ivan Drago as a sparring partner. Every time you see him, he just gets bigger and bigger and bulkier and bulkier. And, he'd done a couple of good things. Great knockdown for Commons. 9 times out of 10 would have finished that, no problem, puts it over the bar. But with Pookie and Borictor, to me, you just say, look, put it down to one crap season and get rid of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And even get half the money back for them. Whereas, because if you try them again and they still can't do it next season, people are just going to go, they're hopeless. They're not going to touch them with a bar's pole. You know what I mean?
We got an email that I want to read out. It's from Mick Downey. He says, you keep shouting for Balde. In my opinion, he's pish poor. There isn't a player in there. He will be moved on in the summer. Love the show, guys. Keep it up. Hail, hail. Regards, Mick Downey. The only other Mick I know worships Ray Lewis, so we'll take that for what it's worth. But your thoughts there? I mean, me personally, when he's been subbed on, he looks like there's a player that has initiative. He's always looking for the ball. He might not be able to pull it off every single time, and I think you need to be accepting of that, considering how limited his playing time has been this season. But when he does come on, he does show you something a bit different. I mean, today he held the ball up in several situations quite well. And I personally, I think there's a player in there, and I think it's a useful a player to give us something a bit different going forward. I certainly wouldn't sell him on in the summer. Would you agree?
No, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't try and give you somebody's life story after only meeting them 2 or 3 times. And similarly, I wouldn't tell you Bobo Baldi is definitely going to be a player, or definitely not based on what I've seen, because I've not seen enough of him. It's that simple. I do trust the manager's judgment. Clearly, he's thing. But we've seen it in the past with people like Lustig. I think Johansson will be the same. They kind of need a 6 months to a year to settle in, just to bed into the thing, and then just watch them go. To me, foreign players coming to a new country, the season to judge them is always the second season.
Yeah.
I know it's different with Pookie and Borictor, but I would say the difference between Pookie and Borictor is they had a pedigree before it. They're no young guys, you know what I mean? They're international players that have played for big clubs, so they shouldn't need that time. Baldi's he's a kind of young player, like Lustig, Johansson. These guys beat on, you know what I mean? They just need that time. I mean, I know guys 6 months ago were saying, see that beat on, why did we get him? And then he gets sent off against Ajax and that kind of thing. The boy was different class.
Yeah, you're right.
Up until the things, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And you just need that. It's like anything. I mean, I wouldn't like to go to Norway or Spain and just set up myself in a house and a job and all that and just be like, I've hit the ground running after 2 weeks. Just doesn't work like that, you know what I mean? It takes time. And, at the end of the day, remember as well, it's Celtic. I mean, Celtic, I would say, do more than mace for players, settle them in, all that sort of thing. But the expectation is absolutely enormous.
Massive.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Every day you go out in the street, you've got guys coming up to you saying, we need to win this, we need to win that, and all that kind of thing.
And they recognize you too. Everywhere you go.
And so, you have to live with that and you have to deal with that. And I think Tommy Burns said it perfectly where he said, one half of the city hates you, another half thinks it owns you. I mean, that's pretty much it. Some guys can handle it, some guys revel in it, and some guys fold because of it. And I think when to judge Baldi would be next season. I think if you talk to me in December 2014, then I'll be able to make a proper judgment on him.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. And this may be an overly simplistic criteria, but I think that there is something to be said. You bring up Pookie and Borictor, and the comparison between how Balde's had a chance and been able to settle in and been able to get some time. how much do you think the language barrier plays into it? Because I know that, different players, when they come in, they have a varying grasp of the English language. And I obviously want to tread lightly with this issue, but I think that plays into it as well. When Baldé's coming on today, you can see Lennon trying to communicate with him, and it was a bit more forced and a bit more sort of gesturing rather than, for somebody that, speaks English fluently, it's just like, and you can use colloquialisms, and it seems like it's quicker for them to pick those sorts of things up. Maybe you don't have that same luxury and trying to communicate with Baldé.
Yeah, I think especially if you're coming off the bench, I think as you're starting every week, football's a universal language, and you get to grips with the game, the pace of the game, what it's like, what players like, etc.
Yeah.
When you're actually getting implicit instructions for your manager, 20 minutes to go, different story. If your grasp of English is pretty basic and stuff like that. And I know sometimes you didn't really see it often now, but in the past you would have, an assistant manager standing there with kind of an iPad or a pad and giving all these instructions to the player, where he's to stand here, and that kind of thing. And football fans would just say, just tell him to go in and score. That's kind of what you're looking for. Baldé, he's a young guy. Everybody's different. Baldé's a young guy and all the rest of it, and had this be like, look at Van Dijk. There's another young guy, and he's just come in and just cruised through the league.
Walked it.
Another achievement. It never ever gets Celtic any credit whatsoever. There's Virgil van Dijk nominated as the Player of the Year. 22-year-old, first season for Holland, and he's nominated as the Player of the Year as a defender.
Yep.
You know what I mean? That's a phenomenal achievement. You also have a goalkeeper there who gets nominated, and this is a goalkeeper in a team that's scoring goals left, right, and centre.
Yeah, and he doesn't have much to do on a weekly basis, but when there are things to do, granted, a bit soft on the first goal, but he made a couple of reactionary saves today. One of the saves that he made, I would have liked to have seen him had his arms out. His arms were down to the side, but nonetheless, he made a fantastic reactionary save, and you get that week after week from Forster, and Forster's the type of keeper that can win you points. Saving penalties and making, the last-ditch effort saves, that can demoralize the opposition. It really can't be understated.
And then you have Chris Commons, who people say, but he plays for Celtic, he's got to score a goal. He's not a striker.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
He's the top scorer in the league, and he's not a striker.
Yeah.
And he's got, his assists and all that kind of thing. So, and of course, absolutely incredible because, last year we didn't have any nominations, and people say, he didn't deserve any, that kind of thing. This year it's all been, how come Aberdeen have not had any nominations?
Right.
So you name any player in the Aberdeen team that's even close to any Forster, Van Dijk or Commons, it's just not going to happen. So, look, every player's different and all that kind of thing, and some players, and I think, a foreign player coming in, it can struggle and whatever. Baldé just has not had a chance. We need 5-10 games, whatever.
Agreed.
To see him. We didn't have a kind of reserve league at all in Scotland. We have an under-20 league, and so the chances of him actually playing football are pretty limited.
Limited, definitely. And
so, you know what? If they get an offer in and it's roughly the same they pay for him, they might just let him go and say, salute. But, I still think there's something in there. And again, today, he was a handful when he come on, and it's probably the fact that that's the kind of player he is, therefore hinders his chances because we're not a long ball team. But having said that, he showed on a few occasions he's got a deft touch as well.
No question, and he does, as I mentioned before, he does give us a bit of a plan B, a different option. If we are going to use him as an option coming off the bench, I think that he gives us something different compared to anything else that we have at the moment. We have, these strikers that sort of fit a particular mold, and when that strategy, that tactic, that formation isn't working, to have a player that can come in and, to make a baseball analogy, to bring it back to America, being a pinch hitter, in baseball is one of the hardest things because you're cold, you're barely ever getting a chance, and then, when it's your moment, you have to step up there and you have to perform and you have to deliver, and Baldé's shown the ability to do just that. Laid the ball off, in my opinion, for an opportunity that Chris Commons had to put in the back of the net. He skied it over the bar, but that's the type of ability that Baldé has and what he can offer. Paulie has taken time out from shouting from the rooftops to join us in the chat room. He says, do you not think Baldé isn't getting a game because he wasn't Lennon signing? That's his opinion. I know that you've mentioned that in the past. Is that sort of your impression? And we can talk all day about his utility and our own opinion, but if Neil Lennon never rated him from the beginning, and you have to look into this, you have to read into it, because we've talked about the merit of playing Samaras in terms of winning the game, but in terms of the league's already wrapped up, we're trying to learn things. Samaras isn't going to be here in the future, but then Samaras gets the start over Baldé. You have to think Balde isn't in Lennon's plans for one reason or another. And I mean, I think there's a lot of merit to that, being down to the fact that Lennon, this wasn't his preferred signing.
Well, I think, first of all, if Lennon's doing that to somehow stick two fingers up to Pierre Lowell, then, to be honest with you, there's plenty of other stuff he could be doing it with before he should be doing it with Baldy, that's for sure.
True.
Secondly, I think there is a lot of merit in that. I mean, he was the Lennon signing, everybody knows that. He was a kind of John Park kind of signing, and was no really, it was definitely a punt player, you know what I mean? It was definitely I don't think Lennon sat down and said, that's the type of player we need. I think, he was kind of foisted on him. I mean, I know for a fact, because the person who was there told me that Domino Baldi just turned up at Lennoxtown one day, and that's how Lennon found out about it. So, you can take what you will for that. But I do think there is some merit in that. I think there have been players foisted on managers, both Neil Lennon and Tony Mowbray especially in the past.
Sure.
They were trying to be foisted on Gordon Strachan, if people remember. Yeah. Guys turned up at Lennoxtown for trials. Strachan had no idea who they were, told them to leave, blah, 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 blah. So there could be a lot in that. There could be a lot in that. And, it could even be, a case of Lennon wanted a player and then didn't get him and got him and just thought, well, stuff you, you know?
Yeah, and it's unfortunate if that is, if that's Lennon's mentality. But, Rev, let's get you in here. Obviously from what you saw of the game, I'm guessing you had an opportunity to see the goals. Stokes' first goal was just an absolute thing of, I just marveled at it, watching the replay several times. And there's a bit of debate about whether or not, he was intending to shoot for that. Your opinion, was that deliberate? Was he going for goal?
I did not see that goal, and I'm ruining your segue here.
All right.
I saw the Griffiths goal and the equalizer after that Sutton's goal. That's all I was able to see.
Fantastic. Well, let me inject my opinion, and then, Paul, let me get your thoughts on this. Mm-hmm. I think, in that sort of situation, Anthony Stokes, we've seen it from him. At tight angles like that, and especially, we know the technique and the skill that he has, especially at that, the top corner of the 18-yard box. He has the ability to curl the ball in, and he has such command. In my opinion, I think that he has the presence of mind of knowing, who's in the box, who's about to make a run. Obviously, Samaras, he has a tendency to wander. He could have been at the halfway line. I think it was deliberate. I think at that point, 2-0 down, just about to go into halftime. Let's just throw something at it, and if it goes in, great.
Yeah, anybody who watches Anthony Stokes knows that's his optimum place that he tries to put his shots into. He likes coming in on the right-hand side. He likes trying to curl it at the back post. He tries that all the time. Maybe we got a bit fortunate, but, at the end of the day, we'll take them. And, it's all this kind of thing. As I say, I believe people told me that Neil McCann in the commentary was, trying desperately to say, I never meant it and all that kind of thing. And it's just like, who cares? It doesn't really matter. But, yep. I think Anthony Stokes... I was critical of him January, February because I just really didn't think he kicked a ball, but he really has kicked on March, April.
Yeah.
And he's kind of, he certainly added a couple of strings to his bow, I would say. He's thinking about his football more. He's maybe not thinking about off the park enough with some of his comments recently, but that's another story. But certainly, I think Stokes has probably looked at Griffiths and just thought, you know what, I need to get my act together pretty damn quickly,
Well, and how much has Griffith's presence really just fed? How much has he fed off of Griffith's presence? I guess is how you say it, because we always look back to the partnership between Stokes and Hooper, and that's really where Stokes shines. He needs that other striker that has a bit more of that instinctive type play, who's gonna who they can sort of feed off of each other. And I think Griffiths delivers that where we haven't had that since Hooper's left.
Well, I think if any striker comes into a club in January and hits the ground running, then other strikers in the team are thinking, you know what, I'm only about 3 bad performances away to the end of the season, and then they'll get me out and replace me with somebody else.
Yeah.
And that's it. And sometimes you need it. I remember somebody saying, I think it was on Homeboys, about when Griffiths come in to the team, scored a hat-trick, Pookie must have just been looking at that thinking, fucking hell.
Yeah.
That's what am I going to do here? Because Griffiths, I don't think Griffiths is like fucking Marco van Basten, but Griffiths himself said, I can't believe the amount of chances you get at this club. And so it's like, that's a guy who's got 31 goals for last season for a Hibs team which has been disintegrating for years.
Yeah.
Probably kept them in the league. with his goals last season. So, he must be just like, what? This is incredible. Whereas, as we said before, guys like Pukki just didn't seem to. I mean, Christ, even Atajic at Fir Park earlier in the season showed the kind of quality.
Sure.
Could you ever have seen Pukki score a goal like that?
No, never.
Fucking no chance. So, I think definitely Stokes is. He's definitely fed off Griffiths, but I would also think that whatever happens, that one of Lennon's priorities next season will be definitely get another striker in.
I think another striker, and then let's talk about the formation today a little bit. I sent out a tweet, just sort of calling into question, not really in the question, but it's an observation that when we see the starting lineup and having four strikers on the bench, it was always going to wind up being sort of top heavy in the end, with either three at the back or having to sort of shape in one of the midfielders in at one of the fullback positions in order to make do. And we saw that with Scott Brown today. Do you think that's more of an indication of team selection, or is it just our glaring lack of depth, specifically at center half?
Well, I think, we've been really unfortunate with the right backs. Christ almighty, you've got Fisher, Matthews and Lustig all
that's three
injured. And I actually read a tweet yesterday saying, why does everybody think Lustig's so good? I'm like, that guy to me could walk into any team in Europe. He's that good. He's flawless in the Champions League, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And could easily slot in at centre half, as could Charlie Mulgrew, who was also injured, so... Ambrose and Van Dijk have played virtually every week and barely missed a beat, either of the two of them, you know what I mean? And it's a difficult one because you probably is a wee bit. You've got the boy Marcus Fraser, who's centre half and whatever, and obviously O'Connell as well. Mm-hmm. So do you go out and sign somebody who probably will only be as good as Van Dijk and Ambrose, but then knocks O'Connell and Fraser down the pecking order? I'm not really sure. I think we should be in a position now where I've always said that how you really punish the Deathley Rangers isn't it to go and win leagues and whatever, because you can't expect us to do that anyway. It's to actually bring through your own talent in the next 2 to 3 years and flourish that bench and some of the first team positions with young Celtic men who didn't cost you a penny, because they can't even think about doing that just now.
And that's the opportunity that we have, winning the league in early April. Now all of a sudden we have an opportunity to put O'Connell and Fraser on the bench, and instead we have four strikers.
Yeah, I think I was talking to a couple of guys about that just there, and I think that probably Lennon had in his mind the fact that we went to Fir Park twice at the end of last season, played French players and got battered. Just thought, you know what, we're not going to go and do that again.
Yeah,
I definitely think in the last 4 games you'll see these guys. I don't think I've spoke to you since. I thought the boy O'Connell done really well when he played against Ross County. He was probably at fault for their goal, but he never shirked it. We're all going to make mistakes in life. It's not about the mistakes you make; it's how you bounce back from them. And he just stepped up. I think the boy Henderson's going to be a superstar.
No question.
A real superstar.
No question.
Lenny had talked about the dark arts of the game and how he'd cemented Wesley Sneijder against Galatasaray. In the game at Tannadice, he's been booked. Which a lot of players just go into a shell after. As soon as that happens, 5 minutes later, the Dundee United goalkeeper tried to throw the ball out, and Henderson bumped him to ensure that he couldn't do it. He could easily have been sent off for that with a picky referee, but he done it anyway. And that, to me, is the first time we've had a midfielder with that mindset since Paul Lambert.
Yeah.
Paul Lambert was a consummate team player. He would take the booking, take the red card, as long as the team won. And I'm not comparing Henderson, he's a million miles away from Lambert, obviously. But having that mentality as a 17-year-old is quite incredible. Yeah,
no question. And, there's another element to this, which, when you make comparisons to a player like Lambert or, to the midfielders that we have currently, we're talking about a 17-year-old. And his presence when he comes in, like you say, where, he picks up a yellow card and he has that exuberance of youth, where he just doesn't care. He's just, out to play the game. And, he's just going to continue to get better. He is a bit... I don't know what the correct term. Maybe a bit dainty for a central midfielder, but he's going to bulk up. As he becomes, as he grows from a teenager into a man. You can even see it already. His strength growing with each performance that he has. I think he's gotten much better in the tackle, and I think he's become much more composed, which is exciting to see from a younger player. And I would hope that we would be giving more opportunities to, like you said, O'Connell. I agree. I thought that, obviously he made a mistake early on, but he really grew into the game and he got better as the game went along. It seemed as though playing against a surer hand next to him in center half really it really helped him and it composed him as the game went on. And I'd hope, as you pointed out, that over the last 4 games of the season, we're going to see more of them. It's a good point, though, going into Fir Park. Obviously, this is one of our sort of fiercest foes, I guess, or one of the teams that we really want to put away. We want to put every team away, but I mean, any team led by Stuart McCall at their away ground, especially in the fact that we haven't showered ourselves in great performances as of late. We want to put that right.
I think, Graham, if I'm the manager, I look at the last 4 games and say, you know what, next 3 games, just complete experiment, players, positions, systems, styles, whatever you want.
Yeah.
Then bring the guys that won the league back for the game against Dundee United when they get the trophy. And everybody goes home happy. That's me.
Yeah, perfect, absolutely. Rev, let's get you in here. We talked a little bit about Lee Griffiths and the fact that scored a great goal today. Didn't start. Obviously, there's some trepidation about even the fact that he was playing today. Neil Lennon coming out this past week. I guess it could be seen as in defense of Lee Griffiths, but obviously we need the Bucks clever. It's early days. There's an investigation going on in terms of what his conduct really was in that sort of situation, and there's charges of racism in this situation. Now, Neil Lennon in the past has come out and said, any form of racism is completely intolerable, and it's an immediate sacking. What are your thoughts? In terms of Lee Griffiths coming, not straight back into the team, but he gets subbed on, and there is an element here where we're going to need to depend on him. He is really our go-to when we're chasing the game, when we need a goal. In terms of just what he does on the park, I think that he needs to play every game that he possibly can, given what he offers us. But it's a bit of a fragile state when we need to rely on him, and we can't count on his behavior off the park. First off, let me ask you what your thoughts were in terms of him actually getting on the park today, and then what are your thoughts as well in terms of his behavior, his alleged behavior, singing the song about Rudy Scatchell and referring him to him as a refugee?
Well, first of all, I guess we gotta point back to, this is the stuff we were mentioning back in January, early February when he, was signed, and it's like, is this the kind of thing that we have to worry about? And then it seemed like, no, everything's going to be okay, and sure enough, now we're getting this, a couple months later where, has he actually grown up? And, obviously there's the video, he was there, what was his participation in it? So that's what we have to figure out now. It's not his first rodeo. He's been down this road how many times, and he has to know, as a professional player, he's going to be videotaped. There's going to be, between just fans, people on the street, he's a public figure. He's got to know that there's going to be a camera, and you got to be aware of it.
But Rev, let me ask you. Let me jump in here real quick, and let me pick up on that one point. Considering, like you say, the fact that he's got previous with this, that he's developed a bit of a reputation. How much of the critique and the condemnation that he's receiving, how much of that is down to the fact that he has previous, and therefore anything that he possibly does? They wanted to castigate him for saying hearts are going bust, which they were. That wasn't a lie.
Right. No, you're right. There's, since what's the word I'm looking for? Since he's already been there, people are going to be quicker to jump and form public opinion against him, and maybe the powers that be that have a bit of an agenda will try to skew the facts if possible. I'm not gonna jump either way. There's like you said, there's an investigation going. I'll wait and see. I'll reserve my own personal judgment. I'm not going to defend him immediately and say, oh no, he didn't do it. And at the same time, I'm not gonna automatically chastise him. I'm gonna wait and see. But this is we need Lee Griffiths, the player, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, and let me. Sorry, go ahead.
He's useful. We need him. He's proven on the field that yes, this is good for us. But if it comes out, the facts and he was involved and he did go there again, then if we're worth our salt at all, we gotta pull the trigger if that's the case.
Pull the trigger how? I mean, do we sack him? Do we let him go? How do we punish him? How do we deal with this? And let me follow up with this. And granted, I realize that I'm walking on eggshells here, but this is a serious issue, and I think that we need to have a serious and honest and candid discussion about it.
Right.
What he's alleged to have sung and maybe started a chant or whatever. Whatever the investigation comes out with, the chant was, and I'll just repeat it: Rudy Sketchel is an effing refugee. Is that inherently racist? And the reason why I ask, obviously there's different contexts to it, but I mean, is refugee a racial term? I mean, you look all over the world, and there are people with refugee status that have different skin colors, different religions, different politics, etc. It's sort of a general term that's thrown out there. Now, granted,
right.
It's improper. It's offensive. I think it's extremely inappropriate, and it's conduct unbecoming of a Celtic player. But when you start throwing out that term racist, it seems to get everybody's reaction and everybody's haunches up, and it's like it drives so much more emotion. But is this term and maybe it's a bit of a misunderstanding because we're American and it's a slippery slope in terms of talking about the differences in interpretation of what is racist here versus in other parts of the world. But in your mind, is it racist? I mean, I think we can agree that it's inappropriate, but is that an appropriate term to put onto this particular chant? And if it's not, how does that factor into the punishment that he perhaps can receive?
And using American English, how we say words and our meanings and connotations and such, well, I say that's racist, no, but xenophobic, which it's kind of a gray area. It's not outright racist, but it kind of has that baggage to it. So either way, we're talking about like, did he go to a level 10 or a level 7? You know what I mean? So it's yes, it's definitely inappropriate and unbecoming of a Celtic player, and especially when you want to go and say, how is this team founded? What are
right.
A lot of the fans, what are our
principles
beliefs and mindsets
yeah.
and such. So either way, I don't think calling it racist and putting that stamp on it is from my use of the language. That's not an appropriate way to categorize that. But I would say more xenophobic.
Yeah.
But like I said, that carries its own different connotations to it.
Paul, help us out here. Help us understand. Are we missing something here in terms of the labeling of the alleged behavior? I mean, is there a difference there, and does it make a difference in terms of the potential punishment? The difference between him saying Rudy Sketchel is an effing refugee versus like Rudy Sketchel is an effing Serb or whatever. If he made like a direct reference to his skin color or his religion or his something that we consistently would deem to be a racial sort of epithet. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's an offensive term. I mean, there's no getting away from it because it's the connotation is quite simple. It's people saying that because you are a refugee, therefore you are not as good as me.
Right.
It's as simple as that.
Right.
The definition of a refugee is someone fleeing war or famine, or if their government's been overthrown. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So to somehow then think that that's the fault of that person is it's beyond belief.
Exactly.
Secondly, the context, of course, is that Rudy Sketchel comes from the Czech Republic, and so therefore, being an Eastern European, he's being labelled. Thirdly, Rudy Sketchel has been a thorn in the side of Hibs pretty much the whole time he's been at Hearts.
Yeah.
Fourthly, and it doesn't excuse it in any way or shape or form, he is the poster boy for Hearts' era of cheating.
Yeah.
And so he is despised by people at Hibs. And under no circumstances did I excuse that song.
No.
Because, that song is abhorrent. And the fact that a group of Hibs supporters, Hibs, Hibernian Football Club, who were formed by Irish refugees, were singing that just turns my stomach. And it turns the stomach of any right-minded Hibs supporter, a lot of which I know, who are absolutely appalled by that song. It's disgusting. And the fact that Hibs have done absolutely nothing about it is a disgrace. It's an absolute disgrace that their pub full of their supporters were singing that song and they have done nothing about it. Absolutely nothing. I mean, Griffiths knew the context of that song. Whether he sung it or not, I don't know, because the video I saw, I'm not really sure, right? And I can't comment on that. But the context is pretty much simple. It's racism. It's simple as that. And it's horrific. You know what I mean? And in 2014, for anybody to be subjected to that because they come from Eastern Europe is appalling.
No question.
You know what I mean? And so if we're going to educate Lee Griffiths, and that's something that I'd go to ring, because as I've said many times before, I am not one of the hang him and flog him brigade, because if they existed, then I'd have been hanged and flogged years ago. not for racism, I must add, but for plenty of other things that Daft Boys do. You know what I mean?
Sure.
If Griffiths needs educated, then so do a hell of a lot of people who are in that pub need educated.
Yeah.
I mean, that to me is a critical thing. The reality is simple. It's America gets a lot of shit for this, but it's the same in Scotland. It's the same everywhere. There is an undercurrent of racism everywhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it never really goes away. People. I lived in America when Barack Obama was elected.
Yep.
And people said to me, "Oh, that must be racism finished." I said, if anything, it's worse. You know what I mean? Because you know that some people just could not abide the prospect of a black person in the White House.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's simple as that. And so it stirs up all that kind of racial hatred. But at the same time, then you have to look at a country that was shooting and lynching black people 40 years previous. Electing a black man is a huge step.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So there's connotations everywhere. In Scotland, you talk about, one of the things I read continuously was that, what'd you expect at Celtic? They threw bananas at Matt Walters in 1988. And I think the context of that has to be talked about, right? For those who didn't know or can't remember, I mean, that was the 2nd of January 1988, Rangers assigned Matt Walters, right, who was a fantastic football player for Aston Villa. And he got bananas thrown at him by certain sections of the Celtic support, which was absolutely disgraceful. No question about that, right? And there was some monkey chants and things like that.
Yep.
The context of that had started the previous August when Liverpool had signed John Barnes. And John Barnes got monkey chants in his first game at Highbury.
That's right.
Against Arsenal. No for Arsenal fans.
Yeah.
From Liverpool fans who could not believe. So, that. Then, when Everton, who at that point had never signed a black football player, went to Anfield, they threw bananas at John Barnes.
Yeah.
Now, I can tell you honestly, nobody anywhere went, that's a disgrace. People laughed about it. Archie McPherson, I can always remember and previewing the Celtic Rangers game in January 1988, was laughingly telling you that stocks of bananas in Glasgow were sold out. Right? So that's the context. In no way does it excuse it, but didn't expect everybody to be educated about it if that's how your commentators are discussing it. Do you know what I mean? And similarly, these trends, Everton fans done it to John Barnes, he's black. So, I genuinely believe the majority of people who threw the bananas that day are not racist. They just done it because they thought it'd be fun.
Right.
And right. It was horrendous. Similarly with Griffiths, I think Griffiths, look, here's the reality, right? We won the league for Hull on the Wednesday. The Celtic players were on the piss Thursday, Friday, as Neil Lennon sanctioned. No training took place. We went to a Ross County game and we all seen the fucking hangover they had in that game. They went out in the piss on Saturday night and then continued through the Sunday, all sanctioned by Neil Lennon, which is I think why he probably never said too much on the whole thing.
Yeah.
We then see Lee Griffiths sing Hearts Are Going Bust, no a crime in my opinion.
No.
Then we see him in the Hibs end. Doesn't bother me in the slightest, but I knew as soon as I saw that was going to be a problem.
Yeah.
I knew some people would go mad about it. I then spoke to some couple of people who work at Celtic and they told me the manager phoned Lee Griffiths whilst that game was going on to tell him to get out, and Griffiths had his phone switched off. So, because he knew, it was going to be a thing.
Yeah.
Now, clearly, standing in the Hibs end, Golden Heart supporters and all that kind of thing, while it's good and all the rest of it, and, it's all fun, it's no the kind of thing a Celtic player should be doing. So none of that. So anybody who think, one strike you're out kind of thing, no, that to me that's just daft boyness. You put it down anyway. This is a different story, and I think that what Neil Lennon's done is good. I know Peter Lawwell had an hour and a half long meeting with Lee Griffiths, and I know that there are going to be things that Griffiths does. I think what I'm trying to say is Celtic are not going to pay lip service to this. They're actually going to make sure, because I think Griffiths is a 24-year-old boy who is not as bad as people perceive him. I mentioned on the Homeboys a couple of weeks ago, I went to a charity game last year for a young Falkirk player who died after being electrocuted at a training ground.
Yeah.
And it was a Celtic / Rangers Old Co select against Hutchison Vale. And Lee Griffiths turned up that day off his own back. Never played in the game, obviously, but turned up to sign autographs, photographs, and all that kind of thing. To boost, and it boosted the crowd by about 300 people. And he didn't have to do that. So he's not as bad as people think he is. Having said that, at probably every stage in any young man's life, we all need a time when somebody just takes you aside and says, you need to get a fucking grip of yourself.
Yeah.
And that's what's needed with Lee Griffiths now. And that happens, and he goes to get educated and that kind of thing. Great. That's the way you should do it, because, you didn't write off any human being as far as I'm concerned. But if it then happens again, as Rev says, you've got to pull the trigger.
Yeah, no question. I think that, there's something to be said about, there was such sentiment. I mean, like Rev said, when he was first signed, I mean, when Yampi and the doctor and Rev and I, after he was signed, we get together and we're like, why are we doing this? Considering he has previous and considering he's capable of doing this again, and it goes against, a lot of our principles, a lot of things that he'd done in the past. It's just poor. It's not well advised to do that, because you're leaving yourself exposed. Okay, fine. We signed him and we're going to support him now because he plays for Celtic. There were so many people that said, right, he's just a deaf wee lad. You got to give him time. He's going to grow up, and now he needs to know what it means to wear the Celtic shirt. To carry that badge on your chest and to behave accordingly. You can't be surprised in this situation that, he's struggling through this and there's going to be hiccups along the road. But if you're going to welcome him into the fold and say, right, he's one of us now, let's give him a shot, you can't then cast him away, just because he makes a mistake here or there. I mean, that's not what you do to a family member. When you have a family member who behaves poorly or, is going through a rough patch, you put an arm around them, you support them, and you help them to try and get better. And that's what I think, is a sensible approach at this point, rather than, and I reacted right when I first saw the video, like, oh, geez, here we go. Get rid of him. But, as time goes on and I think about it more, that's not what you do to somebody that you bring into the fold. They're part of the family. You try and help them and you try and support them, in light of doing the right things, not, just sort of castigate them immediately.
Yeah, I mean, look, the bottom line, Graham, is in the business end of football, it's not a game of principles. It's a game of making money and winning football matches. That's the way they look at it. Barcelona was held up as this paragon of virtue and all that kind of thing. UNICEF sponsorship, which was basically done to open the door to get some really dodgy sponsorship in their shirts. They've been cheating the taxman for years. They ended up paying everybody in Brazil for Neymar. I mean,
well, and and there's also allegations at this point. I don't know if you've picked up on this week. This was revealed that Sandro Rosell, who was the former president of Barcelona, put a €2 million deposit into Ricardo Teixeira, the former the executive director of the FIFA selection committee, into his granddaughter's bank account. That's strange. Yeah. Oh, and who's sponsoring their shirt? Qatar, the Qatar Foundation. Yeah. And who got the World Cup? Yeah. Woohoo!
No, that's right. I mean, that's so. Whilst I think most fans are principled, and I think there's been phenomenal evidence of that this week. Sorry, with the whole 25th anniversary, what happened at Hillsborough, yes. And you saw the way fans are in the main, the reaction to that and all that kind of thing. I'm certainly not looking for principles and morals at the top end of the game with the guys that run the game, because it's actually, to talk about Brazil for a second, it's one of the reasons why the Brazilian clubs have been so kind of lapsed to get into that whole business model of an owner.
Oh, absolutely.
Because they just think, no, it's all bollocks, and it just ruins everything, and it sells you out. So, and, who could argue? Yeah. Really, who could argue against that?
Yeah, no question. Speaking of ownership, and speaking of the ownership of clubs and club state, if you will. You've had a couple of explosive blogs on your blog, thefrontofthebus.blogspot.com. For any of our listeners who may not have caught, I can't imagine how you could not have possibly seen this over the past couple of weeks, but tell us a little bit about what you've been able to uncover. Absolutely explosive stuff.
Well, I mean, first of all, the blog last week, I mean, it's ridiculous, and it's something that, just, but for the hardy thinking who still believe that, Rangers are alive and all that kind of thing, I felt it was important to kind of put some clear daylight between name and Sevco.
Yes. Because
everybody knows that it exists. I mean, the rewriting the history that has gone on in the last couple of years is absolutely staggering.
Yep.
It really is. I mean, it's Hollywood-esque. In terms of what's happened with the Scottish media and stuff. So I just, after a lot of digging and things like that, I thought, right, let's get this out there. And the information was sat on for about 2 weeks deliberately to have maximum impact for a certain cup semi-final because as we'd seen and we had predicted previous to that, Operation Get Sevco into the Scottish Cup final was well underway.
Sure.
They tried to ban Jackie, they tried to get all the tickets, they tried to fuck about with the pitch, and they already had the home venue, and so on and so on and so on. So let's try and just, give them a wee reminder that everything doesn't always go their way. And so what that document showed was a clear agreement that went on that when Rangers were liquidated and that Charles Green and co were ready to take over, the first football match the new company played was at Brecon, and their name that day was Sevco.
Right.
And it was covered up by the SPL because, Reagan at the SFA had already said about, there'll be, social unrest and all that kind of thing, which I believe they probably would have. Because they're no nice people, simple as that. So that was important because I know, to me, look, I know it's only the hardy thinking that believe they're the same club. I understand that, but I felt it was important for a lot of supporters that to try and get this information out there because we're all fed up here. We're all fed up of hearing that Rangers still exist, and when Rangers survive liquidation, like what? It's like me surviving death. It's just. It was so ridiculous. I was right, okay, let's do that, and let's try and get the maximum impact. 9 o'clock on a Friday night, boom. And as that stands, that's now 84,000 hits in a week. I mean, there was like 16,000 hits in 12 hours.
Right.
So, and I know it was important because there's a lot of people out there, much more than myself in terms of Sevco, who are digging at everything that they're doing right now and everything they're covering up. And I felt it was important for these people to have some kind of vindication and to say, look, this, you're right. You know what I mean? There is a clear bit of daylight between Rangers Old Co and Sevco, and there it is, and they know it was there. Now, the questions that arise for that, Graham, was very simple. When they went for the IPO and the institutional investors, if anyone at Sevco or the SPL or the SFA indicated to those institutional investors that was still the same club, then they were lying.
And that's a breach of financial law.
That's fraud.
Yeah.
On a massive scale.
Yeah.
A massive scale. Who knows if they did? But I'm just asking the question. If anyone at the SPL or the SFA or Sevco themselves indicated to you institutional investors that this was the same club you were putting money into, then they were lying. So I'll leave that up to them to answer that question.
Well, and the way that you uncovered this was so clinical. I mean, you pointed to the SPL doctrine or the SFA doctrine as well, where it states that a player cannot play for another team while they're registered to a particular club. And in the documents that you've uncovered, you clearly identify the documentation. Not hearsay, not an email or whatever, an official document that states that the players from Oldco were officially transferred to a different club to usurp that written law. Yeah,
that's the essence of the whole thing. And clearly that attracted a lot of zombies towards me last week, and I just kept sending them that blog. And every single one of them, I'm not even going to read that. And I was like, well, what do you want then? You know what I mean? Like, I can only present... And I know they're thinking, he's just a typical fucking Tim and this, that, and next thing. Fine, but that's the point. It's like, to me, there's no point in writing a blog and saying this is all what happened, or coming on here and saying this is all what happened. There's the evidence.
Right.
Boom, and that's it. I mean, it can't happen every day and all that kind of thing. But when the evidence is there, boom, that's what it was. And I just felt, here's the clear night and day between the both clubs. Argue against that, and they can, and you know what? When I talk about the institutional investors, I kind of like the fact that zombies will say to me, but the SFA didn't say that, and the SPFL didn't say that. I said, good, because that's the thing that will hang them all.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly right. I mean, they can they can ignore the fact that the administrator for Duff and Phelps, who was the principal that was running their club, both the old club and then the administration into the new club, they can ignore that or whatever. I mean, you talk about the heart of thinking. Maybe it's just the desperately grasping at straws for whatever. I mean, that's their last hope.
Here's an interesting thing that they would. It kind of. I mean, clearly I have an affection for Jackie and Sid and Dan Jackson.
Sure.
And and I have an affection for anybody who plays Sevco or did Rangers. So I want them to win that football match last week, clearly.
Yeah.
If they didn't, and if Sevco had got to that cup final, and by some miracle won it, and they must be kicking themselves now that St Johnstone are there, what would they have said when they weren't allowed to be playing in European football?
Right.
Because as UEFA stays, you well know, you need 3 years of accounts to play in a UEFA competition, which they do not have.
I mean, that's a great question, though. What would they point to? I mean, is that more of Peter Lawwell's meddling and the unseen fiend in hand, or when do they come to grips with the fact that there are facts at play here and there are laws of which you're governed by and you have to abide by them?
Let me say this: that what you've said there is hit the nail on the head about it's Peter Lawwell and it's the unseen fiend in hand. That doesn't just extend to their fans. That extends within their club as well. I know for a fact that when Fair, were chiding Rangers Old Co for racist chanting and sectarian chanting, Jack Irvine was sending out emails attacking Fair.
Yeah. And
pointing to connections with Celtic directors and all this kind of... Rather than address the issue, he was saying, he was just basically, it's Celtic fans, unseen fiend in hand, trying to, meddle with the glorious Glasgow Rangers again, you know what I mean? And that kind of thing extends. And, I can sort of, listen, if I was in charge of PR at Celtic, I would tell every single journalist in this country, if you ask any of our fucking players one question about Sevco, you're out. Because I'm sick to death of hearing it.
Why don't they?
Well, that's a good question, because it pains Peter Lawwell every time he gets asked about it. And you actually hear Peter Lawwell's, he's the one that's made the jibes against them.
Exactly. As long as it's at one of our AGMs, in which case he's delighted to talk about him.
Well, of course. But that's the thing. It's like, they have got absolutely nothing to do with us. Do you know what I mean? I mean, it's like, in the past, there has definitely been discussions between Celtic board and Rangers board regarding sponsorship and all that, and maximum. There's no doubt about that. You know what I mean? And it's not a coincidence to come up with the same sponsor. That's all over. There is absolutely no relationship whatsoever between Celtic and Sevco. None.
Well, who can figure out who's in charge of Sevco at any given moment?
Well, that is a good question. I mean, what I would say on that is pretty simple. Is that Sandy Easdale runs the show there.
Okay.
End of story. And as I came on this show 6 months ago, and I say it now and I say it again, Dave King is an imposter.
Of course.
Always has and always will. There's two things about Dave King. As I said before, here's the first one is, if Dave King was the player that he claimed to be, then why has he been used by Sevco so much, and why was he used by David Murray so easily? The second question is, his basic plan is to starve Sevco into liquidation and then get the club for next to nothing. And he wants to do that by getting the season ticket holders to put the money in an escrow fund. So you're basically saying that a guy who willingly gave David Murray 20 million quid for nothing in return is going to be the guy that looks after your money. I mean, it's fucking fantasy island stuff.
I mean, it's beyond that. I mean, Dave King is like one step away from Father Ted. The money's it's just resting.
Yeah, I mean, and any journalist, and I know journalists listen to all the Hail Media shows, as do a million others, which is a great thing. Just ask Dave King one question: how did you escape a prison sentence in South Africa?
Yeah,
that's the only question you need to ask him, because the answer is very simple. He paid his way out of it.
Yeah.
So tell me then he's still got 200, 300, 400 million quid sitting in the bank doing nothing.
It's hysterical. But yeah,
I mean, it's see before, Graham. It's very simple. If I want to buy your house, I make you an offer.
That's it.
That's how it happens. That's
exactly.
how it works.
Exactly.
You know, I want to buy Rev a beer, I give a barman money. That's what happens. Money has to exchange hands.
Right.
Dave King doesn't seem to understand that. Yeah. And he's certainly not going to blow Sandy Easy out the water, that's for sure.
So, as if this wasn't enough to quell the deluded minds or the desperate minds grasping for straws, this past week you released some further documentation which implicates none other than Neil Doncaster. Tell us a little bit about this. Yeah,
well, this is Neil Doncaster is a strange character, and I personally just didn't like the guy. The main reason being that every time the guy does an interview, he says a lot without actually saying anything.
True.
You know, he says a lot of words, but then when you think he's not actually said anything.
Right.
So we all know about the ridiculously shameful 5-way agreement that allowed Sevco to take over the membership of Rangers and join the third division.
Right.
That was bad enough. But at that time when that was going on, we all know that there was an investigation into the EBT scheme going on.
Right.
Which, to be very, very simple about it, is a case of the EBT scheme was, this is the contract that we give to the taxman, and here's the contract we give to the player, and they're two different things. The contract they give to a player was known as a side letter, a secret side letter, if you will. Mm-hmm. So when Neil Doncaster oversees the 5-way agreement, what does he do? He gives Sevco a secret side letter.
Because once the lie starts and it grows into something so big, you can't stop the lie. It has to keep going.
A secret side letter, which is effectively a get-out-of-jail-free card.
Yeah.
That's exactly what that is. It completely undermines the, in his words, full and frank investigation into the EBT scheme by Lord Nimmo Smith, because he is guilty of the same thing Rangers are accused of. It's the same thing. It's a secret side letter. You see in the document, he says, under no circumstances make anybody aware of this unless having to do so by law. Well, how on earth are they supposed to do it by law if nobody actually knows about it?
Exactly. That's the point. Letter. Exactly. That's the point. The point is to keep this away from public view so that there wouldn't be any required diligence by the legal authorities. You know, I mean, if it becomes public, you don't have plausible deniability anymore, and that's really the point of all of this. Yes, we're going to make an agreement, but as long as it stays private, everybody keeps their plausible deniability, and we can continue on as if everything is exactly the same.
Because this is at a time when Green is publicly and privately saying you cannot take the trophies off the old co. The fans are going nuts. We'll never survive. Blah 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 blah. Here's Doncaster giving an assurance that they won't happen. That won't happen. When the Lord Nimmo Smith investigation has not even finished yet.
So what does this mean in terms of the context and the credibility of the Lord Nimmo Smith investigation?
Well, it means there's no credibility to it whatsoever because the whole thing was clearly a sham from start to finish.
Yeah.
Now, the other questions that I would ask Neil Doncaster of this. The first one is, were you informed in September 2011, along with Stuart Regan, by Craig White, that Rangers were going to go bust?
Yeah.
And if so, did you then tear up the TV agreement and rewrite it so that it included the necessity to have a Rangers in the top flight of the SPL? That's the first question.
Because we remember back to that time when, all of the debate was, can we just parachute them back into the top flight? What are we going to do with this team? Are we going to, make them go down to the third division? Are we going to make them start down in, the conference, if you will, and bring up Spartans? There was a lot of trepidation. We were clamoring for the clubs to come out and speak out about it and speak out against bringing Rangers back in, of which Celtic was late to the game, but I digress. And that's that. I mean, to your point, that is an apt question. How much influence did he have on that process?
Yeah, it's a very simple question. Were you informed in September 2011 by Craig White that Rangers were going to go bust? And if so, did you then tear up the TV agreement to rewrite it to make it crystal clear that there needed to be a Rangers in the top flight of the SPL for Sky to pay the money? Now, that's a question I ask you, Neil Doncaster. What we do know, of course, because it was on telly, was that Peter Lorrell had to go down to London and sign a new TV deal.
And we have pictures of Neil Doncaster sitting next to Peter Lawwell in the tube in London, so we know that happened.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, unless Neil Doncaster and Peter Lawwell, go off on a jolly to the Big Smoke, I don't know. They might be into that. Who knows?
So that's a clear question I ask Neil Doncaster right now. Did he rewrite that TV agreement in total secrecy to ensure that Rangers had to be in the SPL top flight? The second question I asked him was, did Ralph Toppin, who was in charge of the SPL, say to you after the Lord Nimmo Smith verdict that this was completely wrong and they had to appeal, and you said no? That's the second question.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it begs, the name that keeps popping into my head through all this as well, considering, when you say the word EBT and you say the word Rangers, not Sevco, Rangers and EBT, and, the top flight of Scottish football administration is Campbell Ogilvie. How does he fit into all this?
Well, I mean, Campbell Ogilvie, look, in the grand scheme of things, there's only one man that matters. It's David Murray, right? Campbell Ogilvie was a fantastic administrator, and Rangers were administering an EBT scheme, so you can join the dots there. Secondly, as I said to you in the last show, Stuart Regan saw the evidence that clearly meant that Campbell Ogilvie lied through his teeth regarding the EBT scheme. He's done nothing about it. Zero. Zilch. The fact of the matter is that when I'm asking Neil Doncaster a simple question, which is, did Ralph Toppin contact you and the rest of the SPL board saying we must appeal this verdict, because basically we're saying here that the rest of the clubs in the SPL don't matter? Did Neil Doncaster be adamant and say absolutely not, no appeal?
Yeah, no question about it.
So that's the two questions he needs to answer.
What's your conclusion? After uncovering this information, I mean, this obviously renders the Lord Nimmo Smith investigation null and void, doesn't it? I mean, there needs to be a full and proper investigation into, the sporting advantage aspect and the implications that has on Oldco, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, in terms of a documentary, I'd like to think we'll prove that Rangers knew exactly they were doing it to get a sporting advantage. The thing for me is this, Graham, is that everybody in Scotland and England and Ireland always, if you hear about corruption in Italy or whatever, readily believe it. Oh, what'd you expect? That kind of thing. And yet we never believe it happens. My conclusion, and based on stuff that I've seen and will continue to see and will continue to bring out, is that this game in this country right now is as corrupt as any league in Europe. Yeah. No question about it.
Yeah.
And I hope to be able to show that over the coming weeks. And of course, in the Ask This Year's documentary, that the level of corruption is beyond belief. And if people want to disprove that, if people like Neil Doncaster want to come on and say, no, that's wrong, then just answer the questions. Answer the two questions that I pose here right now. Did you tear up the TV deal when you knew Rangers were going bust so that to include Rangers in the top flight? And did you vehemently go against Ralph Toppin to abort any appeal by the SPL against the verdict in the Lord Nimmo Smith investigation? That's the two questions I ask him. If he was to come on in any shape or form and answer the questions, I'd be absolutely delighted, because I think the fans at every club in Scotland deserve to have answers.
Absolutely. It's not just Celtic fans who deserve an answer to these questions. It's Scottish football in general. That's who he administers over. He administers the SPL or the SPFL or whatever you want to call it. He is one of the key figures, and we as Scottish football fans deserve a rightful and an honest answer with this. Let me ask you also, we talked a bit about Peter Lawwell and, obviously his ascent to, having a place on the board with the SFA, and his increased participation within administrative issues, like our friends in Govan like to point out so frequently. How does this implicate Peter Lawwell in all of this, in your mind? I mean, how does this implicate our? I mean, there's thoughts of Celtic's involvement or maybe even preference to have Rangers or Sevco or whatever entity that's going to be playing at Ibrox. There is this sentiment that our board wants them back as quickly as possible. How does this information does it implicate our board, Peter Lawwell, at all?
Well, I can honestly say that I've never found any evidence under any shape or form that implicates anybody at Celtic still wanting a Rangers in the top flight or anything like that at all. And I would tell you, because let me tell you, I would not be fucking happy if I saw anything like that. At the end of the investigation and stroke verdict, the LNS investigation, Eric Riley was on holiday, and that was our representative of the SPL board. He was overseas at the time, so there was no communique whatsoever for him on that. I know that for a fact. There were SPL chairmen who were staggered at the Lord Nimmo Smith verdict.
Stephen Thompson.
But, well, yeah, you might be surprised on that. But that's all I'll say.
Really?
But what I'll say is this, Graham. It's clear to me, and, unfortunately, this is the world we live in. There was clearly a fear amongst the SPL chairman of the ramifications of stripping trophies for Rangers Old Co. And by that, I mean, I'm talking threats and violence and all that kind of thing. They clearly feared that.
From a public disorder sense, not really so much from the financial implications.
Well, I mean, the infamous one was, of course, Ali McCoy, wanting to
tell us
their
names
people and all that kind of thing. And one of the people was, of course, Eric Drysdale at Raith Rovers, whose wife was really, really ill at the time, and who just life made a misery.
Yeah,
absolute misery after his name was brought out with that, and that's what inspired Turnbull Hutton to say, "Nah, stuff this." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And do you know something, Graham? In all honesty, I can't really blame people for that.
Yeah.
I cannot really blame for it, but I've suffered it myself.
Right.
I know others have suffered it worse, and so on and so forth. And I'm in the game. I've been a Celtic supporter all my life. I've been an enemy of them my whole life, and I'm used to it. There are some people who have never ever been used to it, and suddenly, I'll give you an example. It's a story I heard was a girl I know, no connection whatsoever to Celtic or anything like that, moved into a house that was continually frequented by orange walks, and had to put up with the behaviour and everything that went and surrounded that and all that kind of thing, and was just like, this is ridiculous in this day and age, that this march of hate. So she started an online petition to try and get Glasgow City Council to say, can we have a review of this, because these people are just running amok.
Right.
Let me tell you, that woman's life was made an absolute misery for 6 months. They went after her house, they went after her at work, they went after her friends, they went after everybody. You know what I mean? Now, the people at the top level, clearly they get abuse. I mean, clearly Peter Lawwell is a demonising figure for Huns and whatever.
For me.
But they've also got fucking layers of security and tons of money.
Right.
And hussies with big fucking gates and all that kind of thing. You know what I mean? The gadgets in the street haven't got that.
That's right.
The gadgets of the street have got a phone call to somebody like Paul Lee saying, "Paul, I need your help right now," and they come running. Right. That's what we've got.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And that's why it's a different kettle of fish. I was I've had to put up with a hell of a lot in the last 6-8 months, and I make no excuses or apologies about it because I knew it would happen, and I know that, you know, and I've been called a liar, and I've been called this and a scheming, I hope die cancer and all this kind of thing, and you know, just horrible stuff. And you know, everything I do has been called into question by them. You know, every aspect of my life, they've pulled my books apart. They've tried to ruin my Amazon reviews and all that kind of thing, and all this kind of thing. And you know, and it can be hard. It can be very hard.
Sure.
You know,
Sure.
I don't give a fuck who you are. There's nothing worse than getting just constant abuse and people telling you. Because the other aspect of that is people can't wait to tell you, but I read the bad review, or I read this, or I read that, and all that kind of thing.
And it stays with you.
Yeah, and you made all this up, and blah blah blah, and all that kind of thing. And you know, even with the documentary, I've had absolute fucking venom about this documentary, and serious threats and all that kind of thing, and all this mountain of shit that just gets flung at you by these people who just have no other purpose but then to try and stop everything you say, everything you do, every platform you have, every aspect of your life. But my message to them right now is simple. You're never going to fucking stop us.
Yeah. Amen.
The truth is going to out.
Amen.
You had your time and you blew it. Now it's our time. Yep. These are our golden years, and we're going to ensure 100% that the lid is lifted off the corruption and the cheating that you put us through for 20 years. And if you had any sense at all, you'd read these books and you'd read the blogs of people, you know, the other people and stuff like that, and you'd watch this documentary and you'd see how you were shafted just as much as we were.
That's right.
Because all that trophies that you celebrated and your 9 leagues and your Champions League participation, that's what killed you. That's why you died, and that's why you're now scrambling about the lower leagues, claiming a moral victory against a half-decent Dun United side who had played in first gear and still wiped the flare with you. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, I can't, I mean, as I say, I know people at Celtic, right, and they have their Celtic persona and their normal persona, right? And that's kind of as far as I'll go. There are things that they can say as Celtic employees, and then there's things that they'll say as your mate in the street and in the pub and at the game and whatever.
Fair enough.
I didn't know Peter Lawwell. I've met him a couple of times, whatever. I didn't really know what kind of man he is. I could tell you a few things about him that would probably shock a few people that he said in the past that I'll no day. But there are a majority of people at Celtic are genuine Celtic supporters. Mm-hmm. There are clearly a few careerists, there's clearly a few arseholes, there's clearly a few whatever. You know what I mean? That's the same in any walk of life, anywhere you go, you know, whatever. And Celtic, as us as fans and as a club, we've suffered the most out of all this.
Yeah, definitely.
You know? I mean, money-wise and all that kind of thing, everything we suffered, off the merchandise, all that kind of thing. We get told everything we win's tainted and all this kind of thing. But because what? Because we played by the rules. Do you know what I mean? And what the clear argument around all this is, Graham, is all we've ever asked for is a level playing field. That's it. Level the pitch and let's play. What Dave King and cohorts can't understand is they still want an advantage. It's not enough for them to be in the top league. They want to be able to compete. They want to be the best right away. And it's that mentality that killed them. And then still, that doesn't sink into them.
You know, it's so interesting because it's the same mentality that came to pass with this latest documentation that you've brought to light. You know, the blog that you released a couple weeks back talking about, you know, the fact that Neil Doncaster, and, you know, obviously we can't make this allegation at the moment, but, you know, if there were situations where it was projected during that IPO that it was the same club, that was really where the value laid in that IPO. Nobody's going to, you know, throw their money at some third division new club without any trophies, et cetera, et cetera. The whole jig was, you know, maintaining the fact that it was the same exact club. You know, and that's sort of the same thing that's carrying through here. When you talk about, you know, Dave King wanting, you know, extra advantages and you know, winning trophies at all costs and all that, that's part of the Rangers brand. You know, that so when you take that away, when you have integrity, the Rangers brand crumbles, and that's why they're so afraid of having transparency and bringing all this to the fore and having integrity.
What I can see, Graham, as an outsider to their situation is, I mean, I didn't really have much. I mean, I just normally get abused by these people. Occasionally, I get the same bloody JPEG for Chris Graham, the guy for Dawson's Creek, laughing about something. You know, that seems to be his level. No, I did it recently, funnily enough. Don't know if they've had any problems over his way or whatever. But you see the venom they pour at Craig White.
Yeah.
Right? Are they actually still believing that Craig White came in there and just liquidated them and pissed off for all the money and nobody batted an eyelid? Do they actually still believe that? Because these are the people who tells you that Craig White was going to be in jail, he was going to be this, he was going to be that. Meanwhile, he's sworn about Disneyland he couldn't give a monkey's chuck about what anybody's saying.
It's so true.
You know what I mean? He's pouncing about in London and Prince concerts, and he's doing all sorts of that kind of thing. You know, and you know, what do we know as well? Heart leapt out the chest at an article I read about his castle up near Inverness, where it said the Bank of Scotland, who did not afford Craig White the same facilities as David Murray. Oh, so you're admitting it now?
Right.
At last, you're admitting it now that the Bank of Scotland afforded Murray facilities that nobody else would have got. And funnily enough, now that Craig White's job's been done, suddenly the hoose is away, and he's away.
Right.
And they still didn't get it. They still think that Craig White came in and masterminded their downfall.
It was all facade.
You know, this wee guy just came in and just went, you know what, we'll do this and then we'll do that and all that kind of thing. Let me tell you honestly right now, and here's a wee snippet for you. See, when Craig White was getting ready to take them over, David Murray had offers for Paul Murray. If you remember him, he pops up every so often.
The Blue Knights, yeah.
And he had Bill Muller. He was briefing them all, Bain and Mike McGill, and the Bank of Scotland and Donald Muir. Forget all name. Craig White's the man. Craig White's the man. Has to be Craig White. Why do you think he was doing that? Just ask yourselves that, and then maybe you'll do my job for you and you'll go after David Murray.
True. Exactly. I mean, you know, they're just puzzle pieces that you put together. And I mean, it must be so hard to see when you're so desperate, again, to just grasp at straws, to believe anything that will, you know, lend credence to the fact that it's still the same club and they're still simply the best and they're still, you know, all of this and that and they have the trophies. When
Graham, Martin Bain and Alistair Johnston were on record on television and both said that they advised against Craig White to David Murray. What does that tell you? Do you know what I mean? And David Murray still went with it. What does that tell you?
Either David Murray is a complete and utter idiot, which we know is not the case, or you be the judge.
Exactly. Just do your own thinking. Don't leave it to people like me and tell me that I'm paranoid. I mean, this week I've been told I'm paranoid, I'm lonely, I've not got any kids, I've never had a girlfriend. I'm like, fucking hell, maybe I am mad if all these things didn't actually happen. You know, that's all fine, but just do your own thinking. Don't take my word for it. Get Neil Doncaster to answer these questions I ask of him. Look at these blogs. Ask David Murray the questions. Do your own thinking about Craig White. Why is this guy who supposedly defrauded your club for millions liquidated you? Why is he running about like fucking lasted international playboys right now? Ask yourselves that. Just ask yourselves, and maybe, just maybe, come to see the asterisk gears.
Yeah, no question about it. Let's get into that. I mean, you know, we're talking about the fact that, I mean, there was, let's just call it what it is. I mean, you know, you could talk about establishment and, you know, the corruption. I mean, this is extortion. You know, this is manufactured extortion. I mean, you want to call Ally McCoist when he's asking, you know, the names of the people on the board. You know, you can call him a cheeky chappy, and, you know, this one does that, and et cetera, et cetera. They know exactly what they're doing. They are extorting reactions out of, you know, their colleagues within the Scottish football hierarchy. You know, through the fans, through the bad behavior of their own fans, so that these other people who could hold them into account are fearful of their lives, and nobody has the courage to stand up and you know and demand integrity, and that's exactly what you're doing, you know, with this Asterisk Gears project.
And you ask yourself one question, because this is a key point with Ally McCoist. Ally McCoist was very ambiguous all that summer that Rangers were liquidated, and then all of a sudden he jumped on the Charles Green boat. And he basically validated Charles Green. That's what sold the season tickets, because Ally McCoist backed him. Right. And people ask, well, why did he do that? Why did he do that? I'll tell you why he done it. Because he negotiated £737,000 a year. That's why he done it.
It's highway robbery. I love it.
He was the first in a long line of greedy bastards.
You know what? If I were in his position, I wouldn't do walking away either.
How else is he going to pay for his karaoke machines, you know?
Oh, very true. Very true. And he does have a healthy appetite. You got to take that into consideration. Paul, tell us about the Asterisk Years, the documentary. It's gotten going in earnest now. Filming has begun. Tell us about, I mean, it must be, it must be conflicting, on a certain level. There's the anxiety of getting going. Once you start, it's like, okay, great, we're off and running. But at the same time, must also be a very stressful event, managing sort of the moment by moment, day by day. Tell us a little bit about, the facilitation and the administration of, the filming, the locations, the content, etc. Give us a sense for what that process is like.
Well, you're right to say the first day filming took place the day after Sefco lost to Rafe Rovers, and I must admit, it was that Monday morning as I woke up, I thought, this is it, and you're kind of hoping against hope everything goes right and so on and so forth. And what we then went into a period of what you would sort of call the business end of the filming, the actual money filming, the actual filming that costs money.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The proper crew and all that kind of thing. And you're talking, a good. I mean, we'll detail everything in the budget as we put stuff in the can, basically. But serious money, to get all this kind of thing.
Sure.
And you kind of, when you go through that process, which is very stressful because I have to be kind of in front of the camera and behind the camera. To get what I want and all that kind of thing. That it was very, very stressful. There's no getting away from that. But as you've also got a crew there who, let's just say, I don't know what to freak out immediately with the kind of stuff that's going to go in this. So yeah, I'm kind of thinking about, let's do this first and that first. And so what's this documentary about, and that kind of thing. But that, I'll tell you a bit about that in a minute because there was a kind of golden moment in that. So the first set of filming was in the hardest location, which was Charlotte Square.
Oof.
And now, you're talking about, forget the fact that David Murray's resident there, right? Alex Salmon's resident there as well.
Right.
So you've got security coming out your arse everywhere you go. You've also got things like, it was the birthplace of Douglas Haig, who led the British Army to slaughter in the First World War. It was John Logie Baird was, born there and all that kind of thing. And, so it's a beautiful part of Edinburgh, but I wanted to kind of bring that to life. And so we've done stuff there. The conditions were horrifically against us. But again, this is what you pay the money for.
Right.
Because, Graham, let me tell you, I could go up there and film on a camera that costs you £300-400, HD quality. Problem is, the sound would be horrendous.
Yeah.
Because it would pick up every aspect of the wind and all that kind of thing. You can't do it. So you need a proper crew. So we were able to do that. And so, when you finish, and we were supposed to be interviewing a guy, and there was a major fuck up because his train was cancelled and just never had we never had any communication, and so by the time we had got there it was too late and stuff like that. So you're thinking, oh my god, I hope this isn't the start of things to come. But we got that done, and then when the footage comes in pretty much that day, in this kind of new-fangled world we live in. So when I actually saw the footage, you think, here we go,
Right.
Because you're looking at footage and you actually then see this is what we're paying for.
Yep.
It's no that kind of on vacation type footage that people shoot or whatever.
Right.
It's proper film. I think I sent you an example 2-3 months ago, the kind of quality, and it's that.
Yeah.
It's that kind of thing.
Yeah.
The contours are great, the colouring's great, the sound's great, and all that kind of thing. And you're mic'd up and whatever. So that was a relief. Do you know what I mean? Because that's effectively what you're paying the crew for. You're paying the crew to send the footage to the editor.
Well, and then it also probably gives you an idea of how to shoot in the future, knowing what it's going to look like, sound like, etc. You can feel more confident and comfortable in the fact that, okay, right, let's go in this particular direction, and you're not sort of cheating against, the possibility of, this happening or that happening. It must be free.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be a hell of a lot easier if I had somebody directing me, I tell you that right now.
Sure.
But I've got to direct me saying stuff, because it's not going to be like, don't expect to see me standing on the screen for an hour going, aye, and then this and that and all that kind of thing. It's not like that. That I'm doing specific things in it to move the story along.
Yeah.
Which was an idea of the producer of this film, who and the producer of this film is the brains behind this. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I can sit here and say, oh, let's do a documentary and we'll do this and do that kind of thing. Aye, how'd you do it then? No clue. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then he gives you a clue. And, so that's the first thing. So when the footage, then the panic is when the footage comes to him, it's, oh my God, what if he thinks it's crap, or what if he thinks it's no good enough, or whatever, and you've just spent 500 quid or whatever filming it. But it was fine. So that was a relief.
Yeah.
Second day, the gods kind of shone on us. Beautifully sunny day. We were at the top of Colton Hill, which you know well, Graham.
That's where I caught pneumonia.
And we done the pieces that we needed today, and then we've done an interview with somebody who was absolutely fantastic. And I'll not say who because I don't want to spoil it for people, but it was just absolutely fantastic. In the course of these things, I mean, you take the Walk On documentary and stuff like that. I know for a fact there was about 52 hours of footage with that. And that's because not everybody that they're interviewing is bang on the money with the stories and, and their sound bites and stuff.
Right.
The person who we interviewed was just spot on. And I reckon the whole interview will probably be able to go in unedited. At that point then, the person says, can I do something else? I said, what do you mean? I want to do something else. Can I dance or something? What? And he ends up singing a song, which was so apt. It wasn't like a rebel song or anything like that, but it was so apt for the content. So that was fantastic.
Yeah.
Third day we went to the belly of the beast. We were in Murrayfield, and we filmed in various locations there and stuff like that. And we interviewed somebody as well, and that all went really well. And so we got a lot of footage in the can, you know what I mean, which was really good because then it just thinks that's now with the producer, with the editor, and it's like, right, well, we've got that. Because that footage is just, a part of the documentary. What you're also going to see in it, you're going to see animation, you're going to see loads of documents, you're going to see a crime wall, you're going to see all sorts of different things that will piece it together.
Wow.
You're also going to hear 3 new original songs, which I have heard one of and was blown away by.
Now tell us about the soundtrack. Obviously Joe McKenna is doing a lot of the work
Joe's
there.
doing a song. Joe, I wanted to because when I stripped this right back and I thought, right, okay, so part of this story in terms of the Edinburgh establishment, of course, is the opportunities that they were given way outweighing the kind of opportunities that you, I, or Rev would ever get. And so now that we have an opportunity to do something, let's ensure that we then give other people opportunities to do something. Do you know what I mean? So that's in terms of, the crew we went to was a relatively new company, who we just thought, let's give them a chance, and based on the kind of work they showed us and stuff. Joe McKenna clearly, as well as being my comrade for Homeboys, is a very talented singer-songwriter. And Joe was tasked with providing the intro song for the credits to begin with, and doing the mood music throughout the actual film. And he's done the mood music, and it's perfect. It was just one of the things, he just got it right away. We then have a girl who has rewritten slightly a song and put a completely different slant on a kind of famous song that we've rewritten in a way that means that we didn't need to get the license for it.
Okay.
And that saved us money. And just know that it's going to blow people away. It's just because the lyrics are so apt for it, and her take on it, and she's got such a stunning voice that that's fantastic. And then we have an outro song, which is a kind of original song by a guy who, when he first came to me, the idea I was a bit unsure about. I was kind of like, right, okay, I'll see that. And then he sent the song, here's a rough copy, and I thought, fucking hell, this is absolutely brilliant. I mean, he's written a song about the asterisk gears.
Oh, wow. That's great.
And similar to what Joe McKenna's doing, but completely different style.
Right.
It's in a kind of indie style.
Okay.
And at first I was kind of like, I'm not really sure that's going to work. But when he played it, I was like, you know what, that is just perfect, And I take my hand. I mean, clearly all these people will get credit. I just didn't want to reveal their names now for kind of things I've outlined in the show earlier. But what I really love about it is the fact that he really thought about it. You know, he subtracted lyrics from the cover of the book and things like that, you know, and some of the tag phrases and whatever, and put it into a song and got a great beat. And I was just like, you know, and that was at a point, I should say as well, he sent that song on a day where I was getting an absolute torrent of abuse on Twitter.
Yeah.
Some real horrible stuff.
Yeah.
And bang, that comes in and it puts you back on, you know, top of the world again, you know, and so that's kind of how it always goes in these things. We've also got a young girl who's doing the animation, who she approached me at a gig I was doing in Coatbridge, and was like, oh, you know, you need animators. And I was like, aye. And she said, well, I can do that. I was like, really? So I said, well, can you do this? And she came back and said, there you go. Like, it was like handing you a penny, you know, like, and I was like, "Can hell, this is fantastic." And
you don't meet people like that every day, you know. I mean,
no, you don't. And I often find with anybody who's creative or artistic is you will tell them this is what you want, and then they'll think, how do I interpret that? And then they do their thing, and it's not really what you're looking for.
Right.
You're looking for, you know, because you have to be a control freak with these kind of things. I mean, I'm the one that's going to take the shit for this if it's crap or whatever. So I need to ensure that what I want is on that screen. So every single thing, because clearly we have tons of documents and things that we're going to show for the first time, they need to be animated. You know, you can't just stand with a bloody camera and film a document.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? That's just ridiculous. So she's done it absolutely spot on. Every single thing we asked her, bang, was back within 2 hours, exactly what we wanted. So that's really good. And she animated our crime wall as well. We would bring certain characters to life and stuff like that and show connections and whatever. So that's all been fantastic. The next point comes at Celtic Park on the 27th of April.
Next Sunday.
We're going to be filming before the Inverness Cali game. Now, I did ask Celtic for permission to film in the Kerrydale Bar, just to go and interview people, you know, but vox pop type. And of course, you know, Celtic being Celtic, like, what's it for? You know, it's like, well, it's not for a snuff movie, you know. But I thought, you know what? And then there was discussion.
Peter does Parkhead.
Yeah, there was a discussion about it, and quite a few people said to me, you know what, didn't do it, didn't even think me it, because we did what this is, you know, by the fans, for the fans.
Yeah,
you know, that's it. So we've got a few things lined up there. We're asking our investors to come along and be on camera. And I know a lot of investors might think they're just coming along to be interviewed. What do you think about cheating or that? And that's fine, they might get that. But there's going to be other things we're going to be doing. You know, there'll be visual effects and that we want them to be part of and show, because we've got certain ideas. And then once that's in the bag, we then have a couple of days of filming in June, which is going to be done by the producer. He's going to come up and do, because what he's then going to do is look at all the footage in the meantime and all the animated stuff and all the music and see where the holes are, you know, and say we need to be bit here, we need to be there, and that's kind of his job. That's where his expertise really come into the fore. And he took a massive weight off our shoulders by saying, you know, whatever holes we need, don't worry, I'll come up, I'll film them. Magic.
Perfect.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because that then saves us the fortunes we need to spend on getting a proper crew.
Right.
So, and hopefully by saying that on air, it means you can't renege on that. So,
you're locked in now.
But, aye. So, that's fantastic. And then, at the minute, we're targeting to be wrapped by the end of September, and then have it ready by the end of October to then take it out to the world. The first thing would be to have a Glasgow premiere, and then to go and tour it wherever people want to see it. A couple of people have expressed an interest already. That's been good. But we want to take this show on the road, and you know, we want to have a premiere in Glasgow first. Now, that's easier said than done. We have been in discussions with certain cinemas and things like that, but we are aware that in a project of this nature, you can be getting along absolutely fine with people, and then all of a sudden, boom, they just don't want to know.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So there's always that. But, you know, as I always say, I say to everybody, because we had one person who clearly had been got at by someone and just done a kind of 180,
and then everything's different, you know.
Yeah, and everything's like suddenly the price is double and all this kind of stuff, and it's like, right, fine, got it.
Right.
And I sort of say, you know, and it kind of disheartens people in the project because they're thinking, oh God, that would have been so much. I was like, just remember, you know, because when you get that kind of thing, it kind of gives you a wee start reminder of really what Scotland's like.
And what,
do you know what I mean?
And why you're doing this.
Yeah, and kind of where, you know, but, you know, as I kept reminding them, Glasgow's green and white. We'll find somewhere, you know what I mean? So there are enough people out there who just, you know, scratch a few backs and stuff like that. But, you know, we're not concerned about that just now. What we're concerned about is putting this thing together. And then there are various things. Once we've got all that done, there are various wee things that the last things that we would do are perhaps the most dangerous things, or maybe the most, I don't know, sort of risky things, if you like. We few wee tricks and stunts we hope to pull off. We even had someone go and film at Ibrox for us, which was a decision I took right at the start. That like, I'm not doing that.
This is the guy that went in to the game in '94 when Celtic supporters were banned, and you're not doing it.
That's exactly why I'm not doing it. No, because the producer had actually said to me way back in February that, you know, we are going to need some footage of Ibrox, you know, rather than, because you film it, it's yours. You show it, and then you film it, then you need to pay for it.
Right.
Simple as that. Everything's money in this. Everything is money.
Yeah.
So the mere cost you can cut by doing it yourself is great. And he's like, yeah, you're going to have to do that, and you're going to have to go there. And I'm just thinking, yeah, okay. And he's like, no, I'm serious. I'm like, well, you can fuck right off. There's no way I'm going there with a fucking camera, having been on shows like this talking about a fucking documentary I'm going to make. You know what I mean? But of course, like anything, a good Tim stepped up and says, I'll do it. And he done it, and it was fantastic. And he listened to everything we said, which is always key. I mean, for example, things I would never know. It's easier to edit stuff that's been filmed off a tripod than it is off a handheld.
Sure.
You know? And I never knew that. I don't have a clue about that. But then, so you tell that to him, and then he goes and films it off a tripod, and it's like magic. You know what I mean? We just done a deal today to pick up some really, really good photographs for a very good price. Really indebted to the guy for the price. That can fill in wee bits and pieces and stuff like that. And so, yeah, I mean, you know, if you talked to me 2-3 weeks ago, I'd have been a bit like, oh my God, but now I'm kind of like, yeah, you know what, we're doing quite well here. And when you look at things back and you hear the information again, you think, yeah, you know, this is why we're doing it, like, you know. This is kind of like, you know, they're the establishment and we're the anarchists here, and we're going to have a go at them, you know?
Yeah, no question. And listen, there's no question that the interest is there. I mean, the buzz has been building over the past several months, and it's great to hear, you know, that to hear from you in terms of, you know, like a progress report, what's happening, you know, what your thoughts are on the process so far. I mean, I constantly get requests for, listen, mate, do you have, you know, all the links to each of the Asterisk Gears interviews that you did, because they're brilliant. I want to, you know, pass them along and everything. I mean, the last interview we did has become, you know, the most listened to Hail Hail Media podcast in history, surpassing 10,000 listens. So, you know,
that's very humbling. Like, I mean, honest to God, like, I mean, I can't tell you in terms of the I mean, Hail Hail Media has obviously got now over 1 million downloads, which is incredible.
It's amazing.
But everybody who's listening to my shows that I've been on, and I can't. My heart goes out to you, because that's my Duracell. You know what I mean? That is the energy that I feed on to do these kind of things. Because, you know, as I've said before many times, I get lonely when the light goes out at night as well, and I've not pulled. And But you know, it's things like that. It really helps it, you know. And there's so many. I mean, the people that are investors, and you know, and I had, you know, just people randomly getting in touch. Jeanette Finlay a couple of days ago, just getting in touch. How are you doing? Blah, 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 you know, and she's been through a horrific time recently.
Sure.
Takes time to get in touch. That's, to me, it's the life and soul of Celtic, and you know, it's why we do it. And it's why we support Celtic. It's why we love Celtic. It's why, you know, that's why we're talking to each other right now.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? It's that energy that creates that positive vibe that, you know, Celtic. You know, one of the questions I asked one of the interviewees was somebody who was very involved in 1994 and the struggle against the board and all that kind of thing was, 20 years ago. Do you ever imagine what we're like now? And he said, no. He said, this is unbelievable.
How
like,
could
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We were always a great club and all that kind of thing. Now, we are a worldwide institution that's known, respected and feared throughout the world. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? And everybody, no matter who they are or how good they are, know that when they come to Celtic Park, they're going to be in for a hell of a game.
That's it.
And I tell you something right now, we couldn't give people a hell of a game in the fucking SPL 20 years ago.
And now look at us.
And now look at us. So,
I mean, unless I'm there, in which case, it's going to be a shit show.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I'm banned. But besides the point, there's so much, as I was pointing out, there's so much energy behind this, and there were so many people. We had donations pouring in, and we met and exceeded our goals for that. For the project, and there were so many people also that got in touch with you and said, how can I help? How can I contribute? And it sounds like the people that have come forward have really met and exceeded your expectations for what you were hoping to get from them.
Yeah, I mean, some people come ahead, and a lot of people come out and say, well, what can you do? And it's like, well, I don't know. And so you just think, you know what, fair enough. And look, in Scotland, as you well know, this is a country that's absolutely caked in negativity, Everybody who tries to do anything gets... The heat goes above the parapet, and there's like people everywhere just want to go bang, 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 shoot it down non-stop, right?
Right.
On that basis, when you get somebody who says, well done, congratulations, how can I help, how you doing, it means so much more. Do you know what I mean? I didn't... probably the only time I ever talk about this is actually when I come on this show. I get abuse every single day. Not just for zombies, by the way. For Celtic supporters or not.
Sure.
Every single day, without question. And sometimes you feel like everybody's just waiting to trip you up and all that kind of thing. And it can be, it can be hard and all that kind of thing. But, you know what? As Tony Benn, the great Tony Benn says, you didn't wrestle with chimney sweeps.
Yeah.
And you never lose focus on what you're trying to do. And that's kind of the ship that I have to steer. The people involved in the Astrospheres project and the people who help and get in touch, they all have one thing in common, which is they have steel in their spine. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you need it because there's plenty of fuckers out there who want to bend it, you know what I mean?
True.
But they know the score. Do you know what I mean? And what I love about them is I could have arguments with them on Twitter or whatever and, debate about football and this and me. I didn't like him, whatever. But I know, and they know, that when the chips are down, they'll be standing at your side. And everybody needs people like that. Do you know what I mean? Everybody says, I mean, I had a serious threat to my house last October where I was actually advised by the police to actually leave the house for 2 days till it calmed down. That's how bad it was. And I had my son as well. And of course, within an hour, I was in another house where one of my great friends up in Aberdeen who just said, the house is yours, I'm off, see you later.
Wow.
You never ever forget things like that, Graham. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's amazing.
And then, so from doing that, October, to then being out in March and seeing the same guy with his lovely fiancée and being able to say to them, yeah, you know what, we come through that and here we are, we're still standing, what do you want to drink? Brilliant. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what it's all about, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I can't, as I say, everybody who listens, everybody who follows me on Twitter, tweets, friends on Facebook, I appreciate it so much because, look, as I've said to you a million times, I'm some daft schemey from your house who loves Celtic and has always loved Celtic. And, I have an opportunity through a mad series of events to try and do something here. And that's what we're trying to do. And, as I said, everybody who tries to derail it, you're never going to do it.
Absolutely not. I mean, not while we have, you talk about steel and their spine, not while we have people like you that, are standing up and spearheading efforts like this. I mean, it's no coincidence why there's so much buzz and so much excitement around this project. I mean, getting back to, how many people have listened to the shows. I mean, just generally when you're on, it's what, I mean, we get probably quadruple the listens to this show when you're on than otherwise, and there's no secret behind it. Nobody's going to tell their friends, oh, listen to these three wankers talk about American wankers talk about Scottish football or Celtic or whatever. But people will tell their friends. Listen, Paul Arkham was on Beyond the Waves, and he said this, that, and the other, and he's coming together with this project, and there's so much buzz that it's viral. This is the very definition of viral, and that must be such a reinforcement that for each one of these people that step up on Twitter or elsewhere and try and give you abuse, there's 10 other people that maybe aren't saying it, but they're in your corner, and they far outweigh anybody that's stepping up and trying to give you a hard time.
I had to, as you well know, like in the last 6 months, I had some serious stuff going on regarding threats and stuff like that, and I had to speak to some serious people, as you well know. And when you have people like that behind you, it's very hard to fear anybody. And I actually also had someone who's very well known in Scotland in that department come forward to me and say, got your back, mate. I was like, fucking hell.
Wow.
I was just like, wow, because, this is a guy who you would want to have your back.
Exactly.
But, look, let's not get too sentimental. You're talking about American wankers. Where is Yompi and Dr. J?
I think they're sitting by by their Spreaker or the iPhones or whatever they're listening on, and they're riveted just like everybody else. I mean,
I was hoping for another Yompi and Rev spat about MLS.
Rev, do you want to weigh in on the MLS banter going back and forth? It seems like a useful exercise.
All I'm going to say is I'm here, where's Yampi? So I don't even have to try.
Maybe.
The gauntlet has been laid down.
Yeah, exactly. Line in the sand. Well, we'll probably leave that for another day. I got in touch with Yampi, and I know he's got a lot going on this Saturday, Easter weekend. Obviously, there's a lot going on, especially with families and et cetera. But
this is the weekend. Everybody pretends to like their families, don't they? If I heard that, it's Easter, I need to go and see the family. Why? You're supposed to go and see them every day, or every weekend or whatever. I bet you're at church tomorrow as well, Graham.
I will be at church, absolutely.
Oh, God.
You sure you're not Italian?
Well, I'll tell you something. I mean, you must need to go there for about 8 hours, all the sins you create.
I just sit there and be quiet like everybody else. It's the one moment of quiet in my life.
I imagine you like Harvey Keitel in Mean Streets, just going in wondering what it's all about. You know what I mean? Rev, you're not going to be at church tomorrow, are you?
No, I'm probably not even going to wake up till like 10 o'clock.
Rev's not going to church because he's getting high. Now joining us, he decided to call in. It's Dr. J. Hail, Doc.
Hail, boys.
How are you, sir?
I'm doing good.
Give us your thoughts.
How are
you? We're doing fantastic, as always. Give us your thoughts on well, I mean, we could talk about the game today, but, obviously just a very powerful discussion here, as we typically do with Paul Larkin. Your thoughts?
I didn't realize it was 2 o'clock.
I think that's the general sentiment. 2 o'clock here on the East Coast of the U.S. I mean, 2 hours passes pretty quickly when we're when the conversation's going like this. But
or when you're drinking Buckfast.
That's true. That's true.
John appears to be doing in his photo.
John, in your vast network of import exporters, I mean, who is your Buckfast supplier to Myrtle Beach? I mean, I know that it may be hard to come by in the Palmetto State.
Chaz Duffy, probably.
Oh, Christ. I tell you, the more Buckfast Duffy sends away from his presence, the better, as far as I'm concerned.
Chaz is probably the best supplier I've ever seen of Buckfast.
Chaz is a supplier of whatever you need. He's a whatever you need guy. We're coming down from the Bronx. What do you need? And it's there.
Oh, Christ. I hope his wife's not listening.
Fantastic.
After that, I just try and bring it back myself. But I'm more of an LD man, to be honest with you.
El Dorado. Okay.
Yeah.
No judgment. No judgment.
Rev,
I once lost a night to that, but.
So I was just going to ask you, Rev, have you ever tasted Buckfast, though?
Yeah, we had it a couple times. I brought it. I had someone, gift it to me, and I've since then had people like, "Oh, where do you go? Where do you get it?" I'm like, you got to have a connection. I don't have one anymore.
And there is an infamous picture of us at Seamus Cummins' house holding up a bottle of Buckfast. That was the infamous 1-0 Joe Ledley 15-1 game.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's right, yeah. I mean, speaking of lost causes, I see Seamus photographed this week in his Phillies outfit.
Yeah, I don't even have
I
anything
can say
to.
that now because the Yankees are back.
Yeah, well,
Yes.
for now.
Yes.
You're outnumbered now, 3-1.
I know this is terrifying. This is
Hey,
terrifying.
Paul, you know, Graham calls us American Huns, right?
Yeah. He never actually said that when he was in the Bronx, John.
Nor will I.
There'd been a red bead on the back of his head if he had said that.
Well, there wouldn't even need to be. I'd be picking my teeth up off the floor, and then I'd be looking for a 287 as quickly as I possibly could.
Exactly.
What we need is coach to phone in.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Good luck with that. Although that would be nice. I miss a bit of the coach.
Absolutely. Jim's a legend. I mean, he's obviously gone quiet because the Yankees stomped the Red Sox recently.
Oof.
But
well, I mean, and you've well documented in your books the time that he drove his tank and the artillery, into the Bronx, thinking that his Toyota Camry was going to be firebombed, by Yankee fans.
Yeah, he was like that guy in the Burbs, Bruce Dern. I'm not in a military uniform and that, armed to the teeth like Rambo.
All right, bring it. I'm ready. Look, you have a Red Sox sticker on your car and a Pennsylvania plate. The dice are yours, my friend.
even brought the hair up to deflect.
Yeah, exactly. Although he looks like he's on hunger strike or something with that hair.
Fucking Noah. But anyway, let's hear John's thoughts on the game while I get a beer.
Go ahead, Doc.
Well, I thought today was interesting. The first goal I thought was kind of unlucky. I mean, Heron made that run up top, and then Effie kind of got caught out, and I think it's hard to be in two places at once. But
it was almost the carbon copy of the goal that he let up against Juventus. I mean, ball through the air, he gets caught on the wrong side, he's napping, and slides it right through. Now, granted, I think Fraser Forster could have done a lot more to stop the goal today than he did versus against Juventus last February. But similar sort of theme, similar sort of shortcoming from Efe.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you're trying to deputize a kid, and we're all clamoring to get the kids in, as you guys were talking about earlier. And I think the issue that you're running into is how do you deal with the kids, and then let FA kind of run around, which is my second favorite Kyle impression is FA running around like a headless chicken. But it's tough. I mean, there are times when he looks like he doesn't know what the hell he's doing.
Yeah,
and it's unfortunate, but I mean, and there are times when he plays great. Today just wasn't one of those times, and to be honest with you, I don't think Virgil did a good job covering himself in glory either. So
I don't think he had his best game, and I think that he struggled a bit, in the past several weeks. Now, granted, I mean, it's been 2 weeks since they've had their last game. He's had a couple games off through suspension, etc. So, I mean, we can put it down to several different things. He's got Heron playing to the right of him. There's a lot that sort of plays into it, but I agree. I don't think that Virgil had his best game today either.
Do you think today was part of we'll call it like Americans would call it the Sports Illustrated jinx? I mean, they were all three of the guys that were nominated this week didn't have great days.
They were culpable. Yeah, I mean, maybe maybe some of that enters in. Although I think that when you talk about the Sports Illustrated jinx, you talk about a particular player, and most consistently, everybody in Scotland just turned off. They're like, "What the hell are you even talking about?" But Sports Illustrated has, on the cover of their each issue, they typically have a star player from the previous week. So, a quarterback from an NFL team if it's in the fall, or maybe a baseball player who's hit a bunch of home runs if it's in the summer, and consequently, what seems to pattern after that is that they go into a slump immediately after, and they call it the Sports Illustrated jinx. I think that, with this situation, at least it was diversified. At least there were three players that were highlighted, so you couldn't focus so much on one player. Granted, I think it is quite ironic that all three players, I think Commons didn't have, quite, I don't think he had a poor game. I think that, his main shortcoming is back to goal, when he's out with maybe 30 yards. So if he's deeper than 30 yards from goal and he's got his back to goal and he's trying to take the ball and redistribute, I think that sometimes he's waiting for contact, it doesn't come, or he doesn't get the call, and he gives away the ball a little bit cheaply. But other than that, I mean, I think Commons had a decent game. Not his best, but I think he had a decent game. So
well, yeah, I think well, when I'm saying jinx, I mean, well, he missed the pen, and I think that's probably
true.
As far as I go with it. The issue that I saw was more to me Kyle playing in what should have been the space where Johansson should have been, and that's the part that killed me. I mean, I'm sitting there trying to figure out, the reason why in the world that Kyle is playing just behind Commons in that diamond, and I'm just like, dear God, get him out of there. And even and Johansson is not the defensive midfielder, and he's playing at the back end of that, and you have Johansson bringing the ball up to that spot. And why? And if you noticed, like the goals and everything else that happened and the flow that happened in the game happened when they took Kyle out and then put it and went with our 5-striker side. At that point in time, I could have swore that Celtic were playing with 13 strikers on the field. But
it was a throwback. It was at shades of Tony Mowbray. Scott Brown's playing right back.
And he did switch off at the end, and that was But I think Yampi was tweeting it earlier. I'm not upset. I'm not mad. It just is what it is. I think you and him and Paul, you guys were talking about that earlier, and it was okay. I mean, it was all right. There was a couple things that I saw that I'm not surprised about, but. I just don't want. Just please, somebody find Sammy a cab and get him the fuck out of Glasgow. Just go already.
See, that's my thing as well. I mean, Paul made a great point about and there was an interesting stat that was brought up in the telecast today that talks about the fact that Georgi Samaras has scored against Motherwell 7 times, and 6 of them have come for a park. Okay, fair enough. Horses for courses. We've heard Neil Lennon talk about that, but given the context of what we're trying to do here, we're trying to learn, and we're trying to see what we have, not what we won't have. As it's basically clear for everybody to see, Georgi Samaras isn't going to be here next season. So why is he playing? I mean, maybe Neil Lennon wants to ensure that we're going to get to 100 points. I mean, I think Paul made another great point in terms of, making sure that we have a strong team out there, because Motherwell, as we know, when we go to Fir Park, they're not going to lay down for us. So I would hope that in the run-in to the end of the season, we're going to see less of Samaras, unfortunately. Or, I don't even want to say unfortunately, because he did score a great goal today. He did have, when he finally turned it on, I think he had a very decent performance. I think that we might see more of him, but my preference would be to see some of the kids and to see Balde, specifically. And I thought that Balde, when he came on, granted he had a couple of lax moments, but I thought on the whole he did quite well. He did some things exceptionally well that we really haven't had, i.e., laying the ball off, bringing the ball down through the air. I mean, I think he set up Commons perfectly where, he should have buried in the back of the net. And those are the types of things that, since we've been missing them, I think can come in quite handy going forward.
Do you not think that when Balde runs, he looks like a baby giraffe?
Do you not think that Sammy looks exactly the same way?
No. I think Sammy at least has a little bit more composure at the ball at his feet. But dear God, Balde just when he gets the ball at his feet, just reminds me of a baby giraffe. He just has no.
Oh, there's a text.
Who's fight there? Was that?
Wasn't mine.
That was me. I'm sorry.
I think that the main thing that separates them is Sammy has a gorgeous mane. We don't really need to go into that, but I think that Balde.
Short of the deal.
Yeah, well, that's true. A bit more of the Liza Minnelli that we've seen more of in the past several weeks. But I think that Balde has more of the initiative. He's going and he's chasing the game, not waiting for the game to come to him. There were moments throughout.
Of course he does, because he knows he's only going to get 45 seconds on the pitch.
Well, but imagine what would happen if you held Georgi Samaras to a bit of accountability.
Oh, that's never going to happen because that love goes one way.
Well, now we're going in circles. So anyway,
yeah.
I mean, 3-3, it was an exciting game to watch, but at the end of it, it was like, that just reminds me of that Aberdeen game from March of 2010. It was towards the end of Mowbray's reign, and we're just chucking strikers and forward players, this, that, and the other. Now, granted, we had Josh Thompson playing next to Thomas Ronya in the back, and with Edson Brafheed, who knows where his heed was, but it had a bit of that, where we're trying to chase the game and we just can't keep it tight at the back. But again, it's impossible to take too much of this seriously. I think we learned some things today. We had some reinforcement in terms of the integrity of the team and the fight, and the spirit that, when we were 2-0 down, we're still fighting, we're still going forward. Let me ask you, Doc, we talked about this a little bit. Rev was getting high while this was happening, but I'll ask you, the Stokesy goal, I mean, was that deliberate, or was that, a cross that just sort of curled in? In my opinion, I think he meant to do it.
I saw him tweet earlier. Yes, that he meant great day, whatever. Yes, I meant it. So that's what he said. So I guess it was really good, whatever it was. So it was perfectly placed. But Paul, I think you're exactly correct. Earlier, you said, I mean, that he's done that a couple different times, and It's always been that little right chip over, from the keeper's right. So I mean, he's done that a couple different times. So I guess, I mean, who cares? It went in. So whatever.
Doc, let me ask you. Sorry, Paul, go ahead.
No, not at all. I was just, I was actually just going to say that to move it on. Who did everybody envisage actually leaving this summer?
Good question, Rev. Go ahead.
Out with Sammy. That's a good question.
All right, let's let you
Come
think
back
about
to
it.
me. Yeah, I gotta think.
Doc, go ahead. You've thought of this.
I think that you're looking at. I don't think Kyle's going to go. I think he's going to stay, and the reason why I think he's going to stay is, like I said many different times, I think Dudu is going to call in a favor to Peter Lawwell and say, "I'll bring you a couple more ringers if you leave my boy there."
Dudu Brown. Well, yeah, but on the flip side though, Dudu stands to benefit more by him moving on, getting the transfer fee, and then there's agent fees to be passed along, so that might facilitate exactly the opposite. But then, see, my argument
who wants him?
Well, that's exactly it. That's my argument. Okay, you want to sell Kyle, but who's going to buy Kyle? Are you going to sell? I mean,
no one's going to buy him.
The only I mean, what do we pay? 1.7 for him. The only outlet I can see coming in for him is going back to Israel, and nobody from Israel is going to pay 1.7 for Bram Kyle at this point.
No, and I think you're probably looking at at some point in time you're going to find somebody. You're going to find a buyer for Tony Watt, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I think he's going to go, and then Pookie probably is going to try and force his way out.
That's Lennon's boy, though.
Also,
yeah, I mean,
that's there's no way in the world Bo Richter's going to stay.
I'd be more inclined to think that Bo Richter's gone, but Pookie, I think. Lennon, that was his guy. He came out in the press. He was very supportive of him. He declared him to be Hooper's replacement. I think that if sentimentality enters into it at all, I think Pookie stays. I mean, and then especially
no.
considering
you misunderstood me. What I said was I think Pookie forces his way out. I think he's regardless of what Lenny wants. There's no way. I mean, he's what, sixth choice on the bench now?
Pookie no like Glasgow?
No, Pookie no like Celtic. And Pookie, like the bench.
Pookie likes plant. Well, yeah, but how can you argue, that Pookie doesn't like the bench? What's his entire career been built on?
I mean, I don't see him as a Lucas Zaluska type. Like, I enjoy second place.
Tom
Doherty
is getting in touch in chat saying Rogic. I think.
Yeah, Rod. Yeah, and what's funny? We had this conversation about 2 weeks ago about watching him play. He's just He's just been horrific. Yeah. I actually stayed up one night and watched it, and it was an insomniac dream. Dear God, the level of football there is just pitiful, and he can't boss the game. And if he can't boss the game there, I mean, Jesus, what is he going to do the rest of the time?
Well, he has been dealing with some injury.
It just doesn't work.
He has been dealing with some injury issues. Obviously, the World Cup coming up, he's going to feature for them. I mean, you talk about you hear from and you look at Australian, the Socceroos fans, and they constantly point to. Now, granted, we're on the tail end, or I guess we're at the end of their golden generation, as it were. But a lot of people put a lot of faith into Tom Rogic, and they're so if he can have a brilliant performance at least in one game, maybe two at Brazil, that's going to raise his profile and maybe, bring some bids in. But to your point, I just don't see the place for him. I see, he's just very Key-like. And as we know, I mean, Key's a brilliant player. I mean, he's been absolutely, magic for Sunderland, but he just didn't quite fit into Neil Lennon's system when he was here. In spite of the fact that, I think he was a brilliant player. He could ping passes everywhere. His vision was so good. He just couldn't find, that run of form that would cement his place in the central midfield. And I see a lot of that in Rogic as well, especially in light of the fact that it seems as though Liam Henderson has stepped up, and that's really going to be the future. I mean, if you're going to talk about Thomas Rogic, Liam Henderson is almost a carbon copy, to a large extent. And I'd rather go with homegrown, especially if we can get a few quid for Thomas Rogic. Yeah,
not just that, but then, I mean, what do you do with McGregor, who's scoring goals from a Chris Commons type position, and then you also have McGeoch, also, not to mention Natajic. I mean, you have all these guys out there, and it's not a bad thing. I mean, I get a kick out of it because I always harp on the whole idea of what's going on with Benfica and Porto and those teams that they bring all these young players in and then try and farm them out and sell them, which is really kind of disheartening for some of those younger players, but I mean, he's bringing a couple through. So, I mean, those guys, they're playing at, first level, or not first level, but League One level. And some, it's tough for them. So yeah. I think those guys are going to probably find a way out also.
Yep.
So I mean, you probably get a clear out of those kids. And I hate to think that Forster goes, but if the goal that Hart gave up again this week, which was near post, which was absolutely just pathetic, is that if that's any indication of how he's going to play when it comes down to what's going to happen in Brazil, there's got to be a chance for Frazier to get some game time. And if that happens, you will get 9 million for him, and he'll go.
Forster's going to be on the plane, no question about it. It's just a matter of, are we going to get a bid in that's going to be too good to resist? And I think that number is going to have to be quite high. I mean, on the heels of the Victor Wanyama move, I think that our sensibility and our tolerance is quite a bit higher than maybe it was several years ago, and the financial footing that we're on right now allows us to be particular about the bids that we accept. So that's going to be an interesting.
Yeah, but you know what's interesting? I did some looking a couple weeks ago about transfer levels, transfer market, and looking at what players are valued at and things like that. And
what website was this?
When Celtic sold them, I forget which one it was. It was the transfermarket.com or something.
Oh, that's a good one.
And it was interesting because the players that we should have sold at the highest point, we didn't, and we ended up getting stuck with them. So obviously you're looking at Kyle being one of them when after a season or two, and then what happens, injury, and then Izzy the same exact thing. Izzy gets hurt the second year after, or the year after he gets the Player of the Year. So they're talked about in these for these bids. Now, granted, all these bids are basically paper talk, but even still, I think you're probably going to find that they're probably going to look at players and say, listen, if we can bank cash now, they're going to win the league. They're going to probably go and they're going to look at what they can do with Champions League, and then say how much money they can bank between now and then. I think that's probably more the thought process than anything else.
On paper, I agree with your on paper I agree with your point, but let's also look at the analogies that you made. The Kyle after the first year, or the Izzy even after he had the injury and struggled to come back. Those are positions where we had a lot of depth. Goalkeeper is not one of them. I mean, if we sell Fraser Forster, then we have Zaluska or the Max Olberschmidt or whomever we're grooming to come through. That's been a key position for us in this run that we've had, in this run of brilliance. And I think that we place a higher premium on that position because, in my opinion, also it's much harder to replace a goalkeeper, and especially a goalkeeper of a Fraser Forster's sort of status. Paul, you always have your finger on the pulse, with these issues. What's your thoughts, in terms of who's going?
I think right now, Graham, that there's a kind of sort of should gamey poker going on between Lennon and Lawwell. Lennon's kind of been quoted recently saying that we want to get all our business done as soon as possible, and that's pretty much because he knows that next season is all about the Champions League. This is the next season is going to be the one that's hardest to sell season tickets for, hardest to sell match tickets for. After the demise of Rangers, you now have no Hearts in the league. there's very, very good chance you could not have any Hibs in the league either. So he wants to get the money spent early doors. In terms of Fraser Forster, I think that he's our trump card in the light that we go for, but didn't get into the Champions League. I think he'll sell him. I think that's where your shortfall is made up by selling Fraser Forster. I didn't expect Van Dijk to go at all next season. I think he's kind of made his mind up that it'll be another year at least. And you know what? That might be a good thing for everything, because it's always about the difficult players that have such a great first season. It's always about the difficult second album. You know what I mean?
Right.
And if he stands up again, then you're just increasing his value, especially if he's in the Champions League, playing week in, week out. I would, as John says, I would expect guys like McGeoch and McGregor and that to go. Tony Watt, I'm not sure about. I think there's been a thorn in the relationship between Lennon and Watt. I think Lennon probably took, he'd be the first to admit, he probably took the word of the Lierse manager a bit too literally. Mm-hmm. And he's now really kind of realised, as most of us probably have, that the guy's an arsehole and just doesn't have any kind of real sort of thought process when he talks about his players or anything like that. And therefore, you know, Watt's record stands up in Belgium. And, you know, Watt needed to be, I mean, look, at the end of the day, right, you're talking about, right, I watched Tony Watt play at Partick Thistle in an under-20 Celtic team against Everton reserves and the Airdrie and Partick Thistle amongst, you know, young Celtic players, right, in July. Nice day, blah, 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 fine. 3 months later, he scores a winning goal against Barcelona. Can you imagine what your life must be like after that?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Let me tell you, in a small country like Scotland, every guy wants to be your mate, every bird wants to, well, you know what I mean. And, you know, he's like 19-year-old when that happens. And how do you cope with that? You know, probably, you tell me anybody whose head that wouldn't go to.
Sure. So,
you know, I think getting him away for that kind of goldfish bowl was a really, really should move, especially for the full year. And I think we'd all hope that he'd come back and be the Tony Watt, because we all know there's a player there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? With that pace and that finishing ability.
Well, and you want to talk about, you know, anticipation and instinct. He's definitely got it, and he's got strength. That's what you want up front.
Absolutely. I think there's been a decision made with McGeoch. I don't think that's going to happen. I think McGeoch wants to get away
to another team in Scotland, maybe, or
maybe. I mean, I know Dundee United were interested in him way back when Jackie just took over, because they thought they might have lost Russell in the transfer window then in January, and McGeoch on loan was going to be the replacement, but then Russell stayed for another 3-4 months, and that was that. The one player I know for a fact that Celtic are definitely interested in is the boy Stuart Armstrong at Dundee United.
Yeah.
Lennon is a huge fan of him, and you know, he's been keeping tabs on him far more than Gold or, you know, Gary Mackay-Steven. Actually, Gary Mackay-Steven is someone who's really impressed me in terms of, you know, here's a guy that came in, kind of set the head of the light, then had a big dip, and I've seen him a couple of times recently, and I've seen him at Tynecastle and Easter Road and against us, and he's looked brilliant in every single game. Mm-hmm. The one guy that really impresses me at Dundee United is the left back, Andrew Robertson, who we actually had as a kid. Let go. He went to Queen's Park as an amateur. Jackie picked him up as an amateur at Queen's Park, and he's been absolutely outstanding for Dundee United this season at left back. I actually said to Jackie, he reminds me of you, and Jackie said, he's got more pace than me. So, you know what I mean? And that's a young laddie as well. So that'd be one to keep tabs on as a natural replacement to Izzy, I'd say. But I expect a big turnover of players whilst the core remaining. You know, Lennon's generals are clearly Mulgrew, who, let's face it, I think Lennon would probably get to heart surgery on him if he needed it.
Yep.
Scott Brown,
Yep.
Chris Commons, Anthony Stokes, they're all going to stay. You know, that's your core right there. I think I think he's supplemented the players really well, as I said before, with guys like Johansson and Beaton.
Agreed.
James Forrest, we need to get that sorted. Issues off the park, obviously, that needs to be rectified. And so does his injury record, because he's clearly a really talented, explosive football player. But if you're going to be injured for every 6 weeks, you're not much good to us.
No.
Do you know what I mean? So that has to connect. And hopefully just that's a young thing. I mean, Steven Gerrard had exactly the same thing with his hamstrings and that kind of thing, and he just grew out of it. And hopefully that happens. We're also going to be supplemented by the fact that Lustig's a player who, I mean, I really admire. There's a £10 million player right there.
I agree, absolutely.
You know, if he was, I mean, John's talking about, you know, if he's surplus to the requirements and you need to make that money, boom, you'll get it for Lustig. There's a top quality international football player that can compete in the Champions League
and walk into most sides.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You've got the minimum. I think minimum 10 million for Foster straight away. So I mean, you've got these guys here. I think Izagiri, you know, on these shows a year ago, everybody kept talking about Izagiri. We never talk about him now because he's back to his best.
Exactly.
And he's a consistently 7 out of 10 player.
Yep. He's
reaching that level of consistency that perhaps only Commons and Brown get. You know, week in, week out, just playing well. Right back, of course, we're kind of, you know, we've got a relative diamond. I mean, we've got obviously Fisher, who I really rate.
We have to keep Fisher. Sorry, you know, not to jump in here, but I mean, you know, Fisher his contract's up in the summer, but I mean, we have to make that a priority.
I mean, to me, in my opinion, like you look at Fisher, you put him at right back, and you put Adam Matthews in front of him. That's the solution right there and then.
Done.
The pace would be absolutely frightening.
Absolutely.
And you know, Celtic play in a league where we basically play against 11 guys sitting in, right? And Tony Mowbray thought, this is what today, how to beat that is. You get your full-backs up and down the pitch, getting the width, and teams just play 5 across the middle of the park and they combat that. They put a guy in front of them all the time. The two most important attacking players in any Celtic team are the centre-halves because they get the ball, and they move out with the ball and they start attacks. And that's why we've got players like Van Dijk and Ambrose and then you have players like Josh Thompson and Thomas Rogner. So they couldn't do that.
So you can keep it on the floor.
I'm not slagging off them because I like Rogner as a player, but they just didn't have that ability.
No.
Ambrose and Van Dijk do have that ability. Look, Barcelona, Pep Guardiola realised 4 years ago, the top clubs in Europe always have ball-playing centre-halves. And you look after their top players like any defender would. So it's the ball-playing centre-halves that become the threat. So he devised a system that pressed the ball high up the pitch and they tore Europe apart for 2 years. Right? Nobody in Scotland can do that to us. Nobody in Scotland, because every defender is looking at it saying, well, I have to mark Chris Commons, but Van Dijk's coming at me like an express train. So what do? Do I run at him and move out of position and leave Commons, or do I just let him run right through me? And that's why Ambrose and Van Dijk are so important. And I think it was a very shrewd move. Because Kelvin Wilson couldn't do that.
Yeah, that's true.
Kelvin Wilson was a great positional defender, great defender, you know, could read the game really well, but he couldn't bring the ball out. And this is why I think, because we have this attacking threat for Ambrose and Van Dijk starting attacks and all that kind of thing, that's why we're scoring goals left, right and centre. Because the opposition just doesn't know how to cope with it. Do you know what I mean? So they are the most important in the team. You know, if you have that backbone, you know, we're going to win the league next season, right? But I tell you, I can see right now in the players' faces there's a steely determination to say, right, we need to win that treble next year. Simple as that.
Well, you hear Chris Commons' comments, you know, at midweek talking about it, and you know that it's weighing on their minds. You know that, you know, Neil Lennon has talked about it repeatedly. I think that, you know, this is something that's missing from his CV, really. I mean, you know, Neil Lennon, before he leaves Celtic, I think wants to be regarded amongst the greats, and until he does that, he needs to win a treble. You know, it's simple as that.
He's going to win 4 in a row next season, which is, you know, almost unprecedented in Celtic history. There's only 2 other managers that have done that, Jock Stein and Willie Maley.
Right.
So that's huge in itself. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And what you want to do is be hoovering up the trophies. You know, I mean, didn't he help? Look, the context of the Morton game was the following week we're playing Barcelona. And I didn't care what anybody says. Most people didn't give a toss about that Morton game.
Yeah.
Because we're playing Barcelona. And then all of a sudden it's a big picture for everybody who wants to have a go at Neil Lennon.
Right.
The Aberdeen game was a huge disappointment. But I think where I would have some sort of degree of sympathy with Celtic is we play in a league where we expected to roll up and beat everybody, right? And the teams that we're playing against are looking at us saying it's a bonus if we get anything in this game. Then we come up against a team who are playing well and who are going to be really up for it against us because it's a cup tie and they've nothing to lose in the league. And we just didn't come up against games like that in Scotland.
Well, not just that. I mean, you know, going up against a team that you know, you heard Aberdeen supporters talking about, you know, trying to win the double and everything. I mean, they're going to be motivated, you know, that much more.
Yeah, and so, you know, in the past we would have cup ties like that all the time. Tynecastle, except we had that this season, and what happened? We rolled up there and put 7 in their net.
Right.
It just wasn't a contest. You know what I mean? And I've seen that I don't know what you guys think, and I'd be really interested in your opinion on this. Even Revs through his hemp haze, is that I've honestly seen games this season where Celtic have played opposition in the SPL top league, where there has been such a gulf in class that it's almost insurmountable.
Doc, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. And if you just match them up man for man, it's ridiculous. I mean, even the most recent one was against Partech. I mean, that game. I know it was 1-0 at halftime, but dear God, I mean, they had 80% of the ball.
Yeah,
and they basically wouldn't let them out. It's like watching a mob movie where the guy holds you by the back of the head, puts you underwater, and says, "Can you breathe?
Yeah.
Can you breathe? No, I can't breathe." And then he lets it out and then puts it back under again. They were literally under pressure the entire game, and they ended up with 5 in the net at that point in time.
Yeah,
that game to me is the most recent example of just an absolute take you out behind the woodshed and kick your ass.
Yeah. Yeah. Rev, your thoughts here. I mean, there have been some performances by Celtic this season that would probably remind you of the Red Bulls, playing against the Philadelphia Union at Red Bull Arena. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. My last thought, and then I gotta go head out. But yeah, no, the way we played this year. I mean, you look at Fraser Forster's record. You look at our points total. You look at some of the games. 7-0. Shit like that, and it's kind of, as a fan, it's kind of heartbreaking to be like, we should be getting the treble every year when, you look at stuff like that, or, at least right now, the last couple of years. But it just gives me, as a fan, something to, have hope for. And, look at next year. Like, next year, I think is going to be a real special year with the core players that we have, the youngsters coming up, and hopefully, fingers crossed, the signings that'll start, in the summer.
Agreed. Absolutely. Rev, thank you so much, sir. We'll let you get going.
Yep. Catch you guys later.
Be good.
Bye.
Have a good Easter.
Later. Cheers. You too, guys.
Eat lots of candy.
There was also that time, Graham. Was it started with the Hearts in the cup tie, and then they won the next 3 games like 18-2.
Right, exactly. That's what I was referencing earlier. That was prior to us even buying Lee Griffiths, and we were just manufacturing goals from all over the place. Adam Matthews had a brilliant goal. I think there were a couple games where Adam Matthews scored 2 games on the bounce, and before he got injured, and that I think that's laudable. When you don't have that out and out prolific. Gunslinger up top, you get contributions from everybody. Obviously, Chris Commons was huge in that run, but
no, I think the managers genuinely thought about that, because I think you could realistically have given criticism about the way Celtic played earlier in the season, no being as pleasing on the eye as it should be. And what's happened, the evolution of the team, as we say, people like Johansson have come in, Beaton, Griffiths, is that they're football players. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we're playing a much more open and expansive game of football. And subsequently, when it clicks, we're absolutely blowing teams off the park. I mean, I take an as example. You played up at Pittodrie, right? You've went a man and a goal down in the first 20 minutes. We absolutely played them off the park that night.
Yep.
I mean, they hardly had a kick at the ball. And I've not seen a Celtic team do that in a game like that since the cup tie at Ibrox, when we drew 2-2 and Key basically never gave them the ball for 80 minutes.
And we were down to 10 men.
And that's the Celtic way.
Yeah.
Do you know
they had a chance to win at the end, too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Ranier missed that header at the end.
Martin O'Neill understood for the get-go, you have to win the battle in Scotland, right? First 20 minutes is going to be a battle. And then once that, the football players then come on. And so he had his team supplemented with huge big defenders, and the Mialbis and the Valharans and Bobo Baldi and all that kind of thing, going and win the battle, Neil Lennon and the Generals. But then the football players took over, the Moravčiks, the Henrik Larssons, Didier Agat, Bobby Petter, all these guys like that who could play. You know what I mean? And now we've kind of merged that into a much more, we're a different breed, this team, do you know what I mean? And it's like, it's becoming very pleasing on the eye, and there's been a terrible lot of games. If you compare it with last season, I come out and thought that was absolutely dreadful, but big picture, we're in the Champions League, this, that, next thing. where we could easily have just put the foot off the gas. I mean, we're 2-0 doing the day in a meaningless game, which means everything to the opposition. Did the foot come off the gas? No. 3 goals were in net.
Right.
And we should have won the game. And that, to me, is brilliant. That's an attitude. And I look at guys like Johansson, especially, and I think that guy's hungry. Do you know what I mean? A mate of mine interviewed Johansson 2-3 weeks ago. I think he had interviewed Ian Black about 2 days before, and he said the difference in attitude was absolutely stark. He said, Johansson, feet on the ground, born winner, hungry. Ian Black, moan.
Well,
do you know what I mean?
He's got to get up to the bucky.
Yeah, and, up at Tannadice, in the main stand at Tannadice 2 weeks ago, Kyle, if you remember, gets, his tights got ripped or something like that. He's rolling about the floor. Johansson ran right over as if he was going to say, "Oh, you're all right," and he said, "Get up, you fairy." And that's what I want to see from my Celtic players, because,
that's who you want to go to war with.
The embodiment of Celtic to me was always Billy McNeil, walking out that tunnel, chest out, look 10 foot tall, ready for battle.
Yep.
And that's what I want to see my players. But we also want to see the Celtic way. And hopefully now, as Rev just touched on at the end there, I think we're going to see that next season. I'm really excited about this team that we've got right now. And I think it's going to be onwards and upwards. And I genuinely think as well that if we can get through these 3 rounds in the Champions League, which we're more than capable of doing, it's going to be boom time once again.
Absolutely brilliant stuff. Boys, thank you so much. We're running up into 3 hours here. So we will let you get on about your weekends and wish you a good Easter. Paul, I can't thank you enough for joining us again today.
No, boss. Pleasure.
For more information about the Asterisk Years documentary, the project, visit theasteriskyears.com for more information, and we wish you the best with that project. We're all very excited. What's the timeline for that and what you're shooting for?
Well, as I say, we're shooting next Sunday, Celtic Park, and then a couple of days in June, maybe one in July, and then that's it. Going to post-production probably end of July, and when we hope to have a rough edit done by about the middle of September, and then, start thinking about a premiere and stuff. But that's kind of what we're aiming for. We know there'll be a few bumps on the way, but we couldn't have done it without our investors, so we can't thank them enough.
Magic. We're just excited and can't wait for that to come out. So all the best to you with that. Just want to give a shout out on Twitter. Evil Knievo, Stevie, Ralph, and Big Tam Russell. They're sitting in the sun listening to Beyond the Waves. So, enjoy this wonderful weather that you're having in Scotland, and enjoy where we're at right now as Celtic supporters. It's a magical time, and we're just going from strength to strength. So fantastic stuff. Doc, thank you for joining us as always. Anything to?
Oh, my absolute pleasure. No, I have nothing to add. When the great Paul Larkin's on, I always listen. So there you go.
Fantastic, and you're not alone. Paul Lee is getting in touch as well. May 14th at London Road CSA, 7 p.m. There's another Celtic Trust meeting, so he wanted to get that information out there.
And I must tell you, actually, I'm in Denny next week. The Neil Mawkins CSC are having a fundraiser, and I'm going to be, at the start of the night, I'm going to be doing a talk or a presentation, a Q&A about the Asterisk Years, the project, the film. It's £10 a ticket. You're getting a free book with that £10 plus everything that comes with it. There's a singer. There's all sorts of stuff going on. If you're looking for tickets, go to @GlasgowRoad on Twitter, which is Stevie Kearney, and he can sort you out if there's any tickets left. But looking forward to going there next week.
Magic. We'll get the information and get that out on Twitter as well. And all the best with that. And also want to give a special mention, shout out, and just thoughts and prayers passed along to Wee Oscar. Just some updates with the wee man this week, and knowing that he's going through a tough time at this moment. He's such an inspiration to so many people, myself and everybody. And we just want to wish Wee Oscar and his family a good Easter, and keep fighting, wee man. And we're all thinking about you. So have a good Easter to everybody listening. Thank you so much for tuning in. I know that you were all as riveted as I was, talking to Paul, and stay tuned for more information. But for now, taking us out, as always, is Shane McGowan and the Pogues. And hail, hail. And keep the faith. We'll talk to you soon.
The island, it is silent now, but the ghosts still haunt the waves. And a torch lights up a famished man who fortune could not save. Did you work upon the railroads? Did you ride the streets of crime? Were your dollars from the White House? Were they from the 5 and dime? Did the old songs start to cheer you? And did they still make you cry? Did you count the months and years? Or did your teardrops quickly dry? I know that it was not to be on a coffin ship. I came here and I never even got so far that they could change my name. Thousands are sailing across the western ocean to a land of opportunity that some of them will never see. Fortune prevailing across the western ocean, their bellies full, their spirits free. They'll break the chains of poverty and they'll dance. In Manhattan's desert twilight, in the dead of afternoon, we stepped hand in hand on Broadway, like the first man on the moon. And a blackbird broke the silence as you whistled, it's so sweet. And in Brendan Behan's footsteps, I danced up and down the street. And we said goodnight to Broadway, giving it our best regards. Tipped our hats to Mr. Cohen, dear old Times Square's favorite bird. Then we raised a glass to JFK and a dozen more besides. When I got back to my empty room, I suppose I must have cried. Thousands are sailing again across the ocean, with a hand of opportunity, just tickets in a